She knew the exact moment when death walked through the door, not because of the gun pressed against her spine, but because she recognized the cologne. Damien Crowe. The man who had turned her father into ash 3 years ago now sat 15 feet away, laughing at someone's joke while blood money stained his knuckles. Serena's hand trembled as she poured his whiskey, and when their eyes finally met, she whispered the 6 words that would either save her life or end it. "I know what you did, Adrian." If you want to see how far vengeance can take a broken woman into the darkest corners of the criminal underworld, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down like bullets against the corrugated metal roof of Blackwater Pier 19, each drop a percussion warning that tonight would be different. Serena Vale's hands should have been steadier. 3 years of practice serving drinks in the kind of establishment where men discussed murder over aged bourbon had taught her perfect control. But tonight, the glass tumbler rattled against the tray just enough that Marco, the floor manager with the crooked nose and dead eyes, shot her a look that said, "Steady or you're done." She steadied. The Meridian Club existed in the gray space between legitimacy and nightmare, wedged between shipping warehouses on the eastern edge of the harbor where the city's money met its violence. Outside, neon signs from luxury hotels reflected off oil-slicked water. Inside, men in $5,000 suits made phone calls that ended with bodies in the bay. The club didn't advertise. You knew about it or you didn't. You were invited or you disappeared trying to get in. Serena had been invisible here for 9 months. The perfect waitress, quiet, efficient, forgettable. She moved between tables like smoke, refilling drinks before they emptied, clearing plates before they were noticed. The kind of woman these men looked through, not at, which was exactly what she needed. Because Damien Crowe sat in the corner booth every Thursday night at 10 o'clock, and Serena had been counting the weeks like a prisoner marking time on a cell wall. Tonight was week 37. She could see him now through the haze of cigar smoke and low amber lighting. Silver gray eyes that never blinked when he gave orders. Black hair touched with premature white at the temples, making him look distinguished instead of the 34 years his file said he was. Hands that had never done their own dirty work but had signed enough death warrants to fill a cemetery. Damien Crowe. The kingpin. The ghost. The man who owned half the eastern seaboard without ever appearing on a single deed or business license. The man who had burned Serena's world to ashes 3 years ago and didn't even remember doing it. Her father had been a warehouse foreman, Thomas Vale. 46 years old, salt and pepper beard, terrible jokes. The kind of dad who still kissed his daughter's forehead before she left for work, even though she was 23 and insisted she was too old for it. He'd worked the docks his entire adult life, honest labor in a dishonest world, keeping his head down and his family fed. Her brother had been 12. Marcus. Loved skateboarding and terrible rap music and stealing Serena's phone to play games on. He'd wanted to be an engineer. Had drawings of bridges and skyscrapers taped to his bedroom wall. 3 years ago, they'd gone to work at Warehouse 7 for a late-night inventory shift. Neither of them came home. The official report said electrical fire. Faulty wiring in a 60-year-old building. 17 dead. Tragic accident. City officials promised inspections. Insurance companies paid out. The story disappeared from the news within a week. But Serena had found the burn pattern photographs that the first responders accidentally left in the public file. She'd interviewed workers who suddenly quit and moved 3 states away. She'd traced shell companies and shipping manifests and followed money through offshore accounts until her eyes bled and her hands shook from too much coffee and not enough sleep. The fire wasn't an accident. It was a negotiation that went bad. A meeting between rival crews in neutral territory. Someone pulled a gun. Someone else torched the building to destroy evidence. And Damien Crowe's organization had been purchasing weapons from a Serbian supplier using that exact warehouse as the drop point. Thomas and Marcus Vale had simply been in the wrong place when powerful men decided to erase their mistakes. So Serena had done what any sane person would do. She'd abandoned her life, built a fake resume, dyed her hair darker, learned to blend into shadows, and gotten herself hired at the one place Damien Crowe visited like clockwork. The Meridian Club, where she'd served his drinks and studied his patterns and waited for the perfect moment. Tonight, her hands weren't trembling anymore as she lifted the tray with his whiskey. Macallan 25, 2 ice cubes. He never varied. Men like Damien loved control, loved routine, loved the illusion that their world operated on rails they'd laid down themselves. Serena had spent 9 months learning those rails. Now she was about to derail everything. She moved through this crowd with practiced ease. The club was packed tonight, city councilmen at the bar, trying not to stare at the girls in cocktail dresses who weren't actually here for their conversation. Russian businessmen in the private booths conducting business that would never appear on tax forms. 2 men she recognized from wanted posters arguing about sports scores like they weren't both responsible for the drug trade in 3 counties. Damien's booth was in the back corner. Strategic placement, clear view of all entrances, wall at his back, exit route through the kitchen 6 steps away. He never sat anywhere without calculating escape vectors. Tonight, he wasn't alone. To his left sat Vincent Torres, his head of security. Former military, dishonorably discharged for reasons that were sealed in classified files Serena couldn't access. Scar tissue across his knuckles, eyes that tracked every person in the room like he was cataloging targets. To his right sat Elena Cross, his attorney. Blonde, beautiful, Harvard law degree, and a win record that made prosecutors quit cases before trial. She wore diamonds that cost more than Serena's childhood home. And across from Damien sat someone Serena didn't recognize. Asian man, early 50s, expensive watch, nervous energy. His hands kept moving to his phone, then away, like he wanted to check it but knew better. A new player. A meeting. Something important enough that Damien had brought his inner circle. Perfect. Serena approached the table with her eyes down, submissive, unthreatening. She'd learned this posture in month 2, shoulders slightly curved, head tilted just enough to show deference without looking weak. These men respected strength, but punished challenges. You had to thread the needle between invisible and interesting. She set drinks in front of Vincent and Elena first. They didn't acknowledge her. The nervous businessman got water, which he immediately gulped like he was dying of thirst. Then Serena placed Damien's whiskey on the table directly in front of him with both hands, the way she'd done 36 times before. Except tonight, she didn't step away. She stood there for exactly 3 seconds, long enough that Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket, long enough that Elena's eyes cut sideways with annoyance, long enough that Damien finally looked up from the contract he was reading. His eyes met hers, silver gray, cold, calculating. For 9 months, Serena had avoided this moment. For 9 months, she'd been furniture, background noise, nothing worth remembering. Now she held his gaze and spoke in a voice just loud enough for the table to hear. "You destroyed my family." The words came out steady, controlled, surgical. "And I spent 3 years learning how to destroy yours." The club didn't actually freeze. That was movie bullshit. But Serena felt the shift. Conversations didn't stop, but they quieted. The jazz singer kept singing, but the piano player's finger stumbled over a chord. Vincent's gun was halfway out of his jacket before Damien raised one finger, a tiny gesture that meant wait. The nervous businessman looked like he might vomit. Elena's expression didn't change at all, which somehow made her more terrifying than Vincent's violence. Damien set down his pen with deliberate care. He leaned back in the booth, studying Serena the way an entomologist might examine an interesting bug before deciding whether to pin it to a board. "Do I know you?" His voice was quiet, educated. The kind of voice that gave orders from boardrooms and everyone obeyed without question. "No," Serena said. "You don't. That's the point. You don't." She reached into her apron pocket slowly, telegraphing the movement so Vincent wouldn't shoot her in the spine, and pulled out a single photograph. Creased, worn from being handled too many times. She placed it on the table next to Damien's drink. The photograph showed a man in a work shirt and cargo pants, beard streaked with gray, arm around a grinning 12-year-old boy. Warehouse 7 loading dock in the background. Date stamp in the corner. 3 years and 2 months ago. "Thomas Vale," Serena said. "Marcus Vale. They died in the harbor fire. The one the news called an accident." Something flickered across Damien's face. Not recognition, not guilt, just calculation. Numbers being run, dates being checked against mental files. "I'm very sorry for your loss," he said, and it sounded almost sincere. "But I don't see what this has to do with Adrian Mercer." Serena spoke the name clearly, precisely, and now she did see recognition. Just a flash, gone in a heartbeat, but it was there. The name no one was supposed to know. The identity Damien Crowe had buried so deep that Serena had spent 8 months tracking it through offshore accounts and encrypted emails, and one terrified witness who told her everything before disappearing to Brazil. Adrian Mercer, the name on the insurance policy for Warehouse 7, the name on the wire transfer that purchased the Serbian weapons, the name connected to shell companies and burned phones and a trail of corpses that led directly to the man sitting in front of her. Before the fire, Serena continued, her voice steady despite her heart trying to punch through her ribs. You were Adrian Mercer, small-time operator, running guns, laundering money, and then something happened at Warehouse 7, something that required burning it to the ground with 17 people inside, including my father and brother. The businessman stood up so fast his chair fell over. I didn't sign up for this. I'm out. He was halfway to the exit before Vincent made a gesture and 2 men Serena hadn't noticed before intercepted him near the bar. They escorted him toward the back office, gently, but with the kind of gentleness that promised violence if he resisted. Elena was typing something on her phone with the kind of speed that suggested lawyers being summoned, evidence being moved, alibis being constructed in real time. Damien just stared at Serena. You've been serving my drinks for 9 months, he said slowly, waiting for tonight. Yes, that's patient. I learned patience burying my family. And you think coming here in front of witnesses, announcing this, he gestured vaguely at the photograph, is going to end well for you? Serena smiled. It felt wrong on her face, like her muscles had forgotten how. I think you're going to let me walk out of here alive because I'm about to tell you something you need to hear. Which is? She leaned down close enough that her hair brushed the table, close enough to smell his cologne, sandalwood and something darker, more expensive. Close enough that Vincent's trigger finger was probably cramping from tension. I'm not here for revenge, Serena whispered. I'm here to make you a deal. Then she straightened, turned, and walked away from the table before anyone could react. Her legs wanted to run, her hands wanted to shake, her heart wanted to explode, but she forced herself to walk at a normal pace, weaving through tables, past the bar where Marco was staring at her with an expression that said you're already dead, through the kitchen where the staff pretended not to see her, and out the back exit into the rain. The alley behind the Meridian Club smelled like garbage and salt water and rotting fish. Serena made it 15 steps before she braced herself against a dumpster and tried to remember how to breathe. She'd actually done it. She'd looked into Damien Crowe's eyes and said the words she'd been rehearsing for 3 years. And she was still alive. For now. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Could be Damien's people tracking her, could be a setup. But something made her swipe to accept. You have 60 seconds to explain, Damien's voice said through the speaker. Why I shouldn't have Vincent put a bullet in your spine the moment you walk away from whatever dumpster you're currently hyperventilating behind. Serena's breath caught. How did you? I own this neighborhood. Every camera, every phone line, every shadow. You think I can't track one waitress? A pause. Talk. She straightened despite the nausea. I have proof. Everything. Shipping manifests, wire transfers, photos of you meeting with the Serbian suppliers, voice recordings from the night of the fire, GPS data placing your phone at the warehouse an hour before it burned. So go to the police. The police are on your payroll. FBI then. You want to know how I know you were Adrian Mercer? Serena asked. Because I've been tracking federal investigations for 3 years. You've got 2 agents in the Organized Crime Task Force, 1 prosecutor in the DA's office, and a federal judge who owes you for his daughter's gambling debts. Going official would get me killed, and the evidence disappeared. Silence on the line. She could hear him breathing, thinking. So what's the deal? He finally asked. Meet me tomorrow. Midnight. Pier 23, the abandoned customs building. Come alone. I'll bring the evidence. We talk. If you convince me you weren't the one who ordered the fire, the evidence disappears. If you can't... She let the threat hang. And if I just kill you now and tear your apartment apart looking for this supposed evidence? Then it goes automatically to 6 different news organizations and 3 international law enforcement agencies via dead man switch. I stop checking in every 12 hours. The whole thing releases. Another pause. Longer this time. You're either very smart or very suicidal, Damien said. Both, probably. Tomorrow night, midnight. You get 10 minutes. If I don't like what I hear, we're done. The line went dead. Serena stood in the rain-soaked alley, phone clutched in her shaking hand, and realized she had just committed herself to the most dangerous conversation of her life, with the man who might have killed her family, or might be the only person who could tell her what really happened. Tracing. She didn't go home. Home was a studio apartment in a bad neighborhood where the locks were decorative and the neighbors knew better than to hear gunshots. If Damien wanted her dead before their meeting, home would be the first place they'd look. Instead, Serena walked 17 blocks through the rain to a 24-hour laundromat that smelled like bleach and desperation. She bought a coffee from the vending machine that tasted like burnt plastic and sat in the corner where she could see both exits. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number she recognized, Jamie Chen, her former roommate from the life before. Before the fire, before everything. Saw you on the news. Warehouse fire anniversary segment. Are you okay? Serena stared at the message. She'd cut off everyone from her old life. Friends, extended family, anyone who might ask questions or try to talk her out of the obsession that had consumed her. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, I'm fine, don't worry. The reply came instantly. You're a terrible liar. Same apartment? No, new place, new job. I'm good, really. The person in that news footage didn't look good. She looked haunted. Serena locked her phone and shoved it in her pocket. Jamie was right. The local news had run an anniversary piece about the harbor fire, remembering the tragedy. And Serena had made the mistake of watching it. There she was, 3 years ago, standing outside the police tape while they pulled bodies from the wreckage. Eyes hollow, face blank. The kind of grief that goes so deep it stops looking like emotion and starts looking like absence. She'd been 23 then. Now she was 26 and felt 60. The laundromat door chimed. Serena's hand went to the folding knife in her jacket pocket before she registered that it was just a homeless man pushing a shopping cart full of cans. He gave her a toothless grin and headed to the bathroom. She needed to calm down, needed to think clearly. Tomorrow night at Pier 23, she would meet Damien Crowe with evidence that could destroy him. Evidence she'd compiled through methods that were probably illegal and definitely dangerous. Bank statements she'd hacked, phone records she'd stolen, security footage she'd obtained through bribes and threats. The flash drive in her apartment contained enough proof to send Damien and half the criminal underworld to federal prison for life. If it was real, if she could trust it, if the witnesses she had interviewed hadn't lied. That was the thing eating at her as she sat in the laundromat drinking poisoned coffee. 3 years of investigation, 3 years of obsession, 3 years of building a case against Damien Crowe. But there were gaps, inconsistencies, small things that didn't quite line up. Like the eyewitness who said Damien left the warehouse 30 minutes before the fire started. Or the burn pattern analysis that suggested multiple ignition points, not one. Or the Serbian supplier who disappeared before Serena could interview him, disappeared in a way that suggested he'd been killed by someone trying to keep him quiet. What if she was wrong? What if Damien wasn't the monster she'd spent 3 years hating? Serena crushed the coffee cup and threw it toward the trash can. Missed. It bounced across the stained linoleum and settled near a washing machine that rattled like it was dying. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Different from before. This time the message was just an address and a time. 3 a.m. Come alone. No signature. No context. Serena should have ignored it. Should have stayed in the laundromat until dawn, then gone to a hotel, then shown up at Pier 23 tomorrow night and had her confrontation with Damien. But she'd spent 3 years chasing truth. And she recognized the address. It was the building where Mikhail Volkov lived, the last surviving witness from the harbor fire. The security guard who'd been outside smoking when the explosion happened. The man whose statement to police had been buried in the official file. The man who'd disappeared from public record 3 weeks after giving that statement. Serena had tried to find him a dozen times. No success. It was like he'd been erased, and now someone was inviting her to his address at 3 a.m. Definitely a trap. Probably going to get her killed. She checked her watch. 1:47 a.m. She had 73 minutes to decide if the truth was worth dying for. The building was in the industrial district, wedged between a closed auto shop and a vacant lot where someone had dumped half a semi-truck's worth of construction debris. 4 stories of crumbling brick, windows covered with plywood, The kind of place that used to be apartments before the neighborhood died and everyone left. Serena approached from the north, staying in shadows, watching for watchers. The street was empty except for a stray cat that hissed at her from behind a rusted chain-link fence. The front door was unlocked. That was the first bad sign. The second bad sign was the stairwell that smelled like mold and something worse, something organic and rotting. Serena covered her mouth with her sleeve and climbed. First floor, empty. Second floor, squatters had been here recently, evidence of makeshift camps, needles scattered across the floor. Third floor. A door stood open at the end of the hall. Light spilled from inside. Real light, not candles or flashlights. Electricity. Someone was paying to keep this place running. Serena paused outside the door. Her hand found the knife in her pocket. 6 inches of folded steel. Wouldn't stop a bullet, but it was better than nothing. "Come in," a voice called from inside. Old, rough, heavy accent that sounded Eastern European. She pushed the door open slowly. The apartment was surprisingly clean. Furniture that didn't match, but was functional. A kitchenette with actual running water. And sitting at a small table near the window was a man who looked like he'd aged 40 years in the last 3. Mikhail Volkov. She recognized him from the police photo. But that photo had shown a thick-necked man in his 50s with dark hair and solid shoulders. The man in front of her was gaunt, gray-skinned, eyes sunken into his skull like they were trying to hide. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Serena didn't sit. "How did you get my number?" "Same way you found me. We've both been looking in dark places." He coughed, wet, rattling. "I don't got much time. Cancer. Maybe 4 months. Maybe less. So I talk fast and you listen, yes?" "Who sent you my number?" "Nobody sent nothing. I've been watching you for 6 months, watching you work at that club, watching you follow Crow, watching you build your little case." He smiled without humor. "You good investigator, but you missing piece." Serena's hand tightened on the knife. "What piece?" Mikhail reached into his jacket slowly, showing his hands, no weapons, and pulled out a worn envelope. He slid it across the table. "The truth about Harbor Fire," he said. "The truth they kill me for if I tell police. The truth I keep quiet 3 years because I was scared." He tapped the envelope. "But now I dine anyway, and you deserve to know." Serena stared at the envelope. "What's in it?" "Proof that Damien Crow not kill your family." The world tilted slightly. Serena gripped the back of the chair to steady herself. "You're lying." "I wish." Mikhail's expression turned sad. "Would be easier, cleaner, but truth is messy." "Then who was there that night? Saw everything. Crow come to warehouse for meeting, yes. But meeting was ambush. Someone else set trap. Someone who wanted Crow dead and no care about workers inside." He paused to cough again, this time bringing up something dark that he spat into a tissue. "Crow tried to stop fire. Try to get people out. Your father..." He pointed at her. "Your father helped him. They pull 5 people from flames before building collapse." Serena's vision swam. "No, that's not... The evidence, evidence can be arranged. Witnesses can be bought. I know because I was paid to lie in my police statement, paid by real man who started fire." Mikhail pushed the envelope closer. "His name in there. Everything in there. I keep it 3 years like insurance. But insurance no good if I dead from cancer before I use it." Serena grabbed the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were photographs, grainy security camera stills showing multiple angles of the warehouse fire. Men running from the building. One image showed Damien Crow, unmistakable even through the smoke, half carrying an unconscious worker toward the exit. Another image showed a different man pouring liquid from a canister near the warehouse loading dock. The timestamp was 11 minutes before the fire started, and Serena recognized him, Carlos Mendoza, Deputy Director of Harbor Operations, city official, the man who'd signed off on the electrical fire investigation, the man who'd helped bury the real story, the man who'd died in a car accident 6 months after the fire. Convenient. Mendoza was working for rival operation, Mikhail explained. Wanted to eliminate Crow and make look like accident. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone, destroy Crow's weapon shipment and blame him for fire. But Crow survive. So Mendoza arranged for evidence pointing to Crow, arranged for witnesses like me to lie. Then someone kill Mendoza before he talk. Who killed him? Mikhail shrugged. Maybe Crow, maybe Crow's people, maybe someone else who want him quiet. Does it matter? Dead is dead. Serena shuffled through the other papers in the envelope. Financial records showing payments from Mendoza to Mikhail. Transcript of Mikhail's original statement to police before it was edited. Phone records placing Mendoza at the warehouse an hour before Damien arrived. And at the bottom, a handwritten letter. It was addressed to Serena Vale. She looked up sharply. How did you... Cole, I know who you are 6 months ago when you start working at Meridian Club. Know why you there. Know what you planning. Mikhail's expression softened. I have daughter your age in Ukraine. Haven't seen her in 8 years because I run from people who want me dead. So I understand. Understand hate. Understand need for revenge. He pointed at the letter. But revenge against wrong man is just more poison. Serena unfolded the letter with trembling fingers. The handwriting was shaky, but legible. Ms. Vale, your father died a hero. I watched him drag 3 people from that warehouse before smoke overcame him. He didn't know who they were, didn't care, just saw people who needed help and gave it even though it cost his life. Damien Crow tried to save him, went back into the flames looking for survivors. Your father and Crow pulled my nephew from the fire. Boy was 14, working illegal job his parents didn't know about. He alive today because of them. Your father's last words to me were, get the kid out. Not save me. Not tell my family. Just concern for stranger's child. You have spent 3 years hating wrong man. I don't blame you. Evidence looked real. But now you deserve truth so you can bury your dead properly and maybe find peace. Truth is, sometimes bad things happen because world is broken, not because one person is monster. Your father died in crossfire of war he never chose. Damien Crow didn't start that war. He just survived it. What you do with this information is your choice. But I'm dying, man, and I want someone to know truth before I go. Mikhail Volkov. Serena read it 3 times. Then she set it down on the table very carefully because her hands wanted to rip it to pieces. 3 years. 3 years of hate. 3 years of planning. 3 years of building a case against a man who hadn't killed her family. I don't believe you, she whispered. Yes, you do, Mikhail said gently. That why you shaking. Serena stood up so fast the chair fell over. This is bullshit. You're working for Crow. He sent you to... Crow don't even know I alive. I disappear after fire specifically so he can't find me and kill me for what I saw. Mikhail pulled out a cigarette, lit it with a lighter that took 3 tries. But I watch him since then. Watch him change. 3 years ago, he was small-time criminal trying to climb ladder. Today, he runs half the East Coast. And you know why? Serena didn't answer. Because Harbor Fire changed him, Mikhail continued. Seeing those people die, seeing your father die trying to save strangers. Something broke in Crow that night. Or maybe something fixed. He quit small deals, stopped getting hands dirty, built empire on money and lawyers and shell companies instead of blood. He's still a criminal. Yes. But different kind now. The kind who don't burn buildings full of innocent people. Serena grabbed the envelope and shoved it in her jacket. I need to verify this. Of course. You good investigator. You verify. Mikhail smiled sadly. But when you done verifying, when you accept I tell truth, you remember something for me. What? Revenge is easy, forgiveness is hard, but peace, he tapped his chest. Peace only come from hard choices. Serena turned towards the door. She needed to get out of this apartment, away from this dying man and his impossible truth, back into the rain where she could think clearly. One more thing, Mikhail called after her. She stopped in the doorway but didn't turn around. Meeting tomorrow night with Crow, Mikhail said. He will be honest with you. Is his nature. He don't lie about past, only about future. You ask him about fire, he tell you truth, even if truth hurt him. How do you know about the meeting? Because I the one who give him your phone number, who you think send him the anonymous message suggesting he meet you. Mikhail chuckled, which turned into another wet cough. I set this up 6 months ago when I realized you both need same thing, closure. Serena walked out of the apartment without responding. She walked down 3 flights of stairs. She walked out into the rain. And then she stopped on the sidewalk and screamed into the empty street until her throat was raw and her voice gave out. Because the last 3 years of her life had just been revealed as a waste, a mission built on lies, a vendetta aimed at the wrong target. And tomorrow night at Pier 23, she would have to look Damien Crowe in the eye and admit that everything she thought she knew was wrong. Or she could ignore Mikhail's envelope, stick to her original plan, destroy Damien anyway. What difference did truth make when her father and brother were still dead? Serena stood in the rain until dawn started creeping over the harbor skyline, and by the time the first light touched the water, she still didn't know which choice she was going to make. The sun came up wrong. That was Serena's first coherent thought as she stood on the cracked sidewalk outside Mikhail Volkov's building, watching orange light bleed across the harbor like an open wound. The sun wasn't supposed to rise today. The world wasn't supposed to keep spinning after what she'd just learned, but it did. Cars started passing on the street. A garbage truck rumbled by. Somewhere nearby, a shop opened its metal security gate with a screech that made her teeth ache. Normal morning sounds in a world that had just stopped being normal. Serena's hand went to her jacket pocket where Mikhail's envelope pressed against her ribs like a second heartbeat. The photographs inside. The letter. The proof that everything she'd believed for 3 years was a carefully constructed lie. She needed to move. Standing here made her a target. If Damien's people were watching, and they were always watching, they'd already logged her location, already traced her steps from the laundromat to this abandoned building, already wondering what business a waitress had in the industrial district at dawn. Her phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Still alive? Impressive. No signature, but she knew the sender. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to type something cutting, something that would hurt him the way she'd been hurt. Instead, she wrote, "Midnight still stands." The reply came instantly, Pier 23. Don't be late. Then, "And Serena, come armed if it makes you feel safer. I would." She pocketed the phone and started walking. No destination in mind, just movement to keep the screaming thoughts from catching up to her. 7 blocks later, she found herself outside a 24-hour diner that smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaning solution. The kind of place where truckers ate breakfast at 5 a.m. and nobody asked questions about the woman with hollow eyes and rain-soaked clothes sitting in the corner booth. Serena ordered coffee she wouldn't drink and eggs she wouldn't eat. When the waitress left, she pulled out Mikhail's envelope and spread the contents across the sticky table. The photographs first. Security camera stills from angles that shouldn't exist. Cameras the official investigation never mentioned. She could see the timestamp in the corner of each image. See the progression of events like a flip book of disaster. 11:47 p.m. Carlos Mendoza's car pulling into the warehouse parking lot. 11:52 p.m. Mendoza carrying 2 industrial containers toward the loading dock, the kind of containers that held accelerant. 11:58 p.m. Damien Crowe's black Mercedes arriving. 2 men with him, one she didn't recognize, one who might have been Vincent Torres, but the angle was wrong to be sure. 12:03 a.m. Mendoza's car leaving, fast, tires smoking. 12:09 a.m. First flames visible in the northwest corner of the warehouse. 12:11 a.m. Damien and his men running toward the fire, not away. 12:14 a.m. Damien half carrying an unconscious worker through the smoke. The worker's face was visible in this shot. Young, maybe 16, burn marks on his arms. 12:16 a.m. Another figure emerging from the flames, thick-shouldered, wearing the reflective vest of a warehouse foreman. Thomas Vale, her father. Serena's hand started to shake so badly the photograph blurred. She set it down and pressed her palms flat against the table until her bones hurt. The image showed her father dragging someone by their collar, face contorted with effort, shirt soaked with sweat and smoke damage. Behind him, the warehouse was an inferno. In front of him, Damien Crowe was gesturing frantically toward the exit. They weren't enemies in this photograph. They were 2 men trying to save lives while the world burned. "You okay, honey?" The waitress had appeared with coffee. Serena realized she was crying, silent tears that dripped onto the photographs and smeared the already grainy images. "Fine," she managed. "Just tired." "Ain't we all?" The waitress refilled a cup Serena hadn't touched and moved on to the next table. Serena wiped her face with a napkin that felt like sandpaper and forced herself to look at the next photograph. This one showed the aftermath. Bodies on gurneys, emergency vehicles, investigators in hazmat suits picking through wreckage, and in the corner, barely visible behind a fire truck, stood Damien Crowe. His suit was destroyed, his face was covered in soot, and his expression, he looked destroyed. Not guilty, not calculating, just broken. Like a man who just watched something terrible happen and couldn't figure out how to put the pieces back together. Serena shoved the photographs back into the envelope before she did something stupid like scream in the middle of the diner. The financial records were next. Bank statements showing payments from shell companies owned by Carlos Mendoza to Mikhail Volkov. $50,000 delivered in 3 installments over 6 weeks. The memo line on each transfer was blank, but the timing told the story. First payment, 2 days after the fire. Second payment, the day Mikhail gave his edited statement to police. Third payment, the day the official investigation closed the case as accidental. Blood money. Hush money. The kind of money that kept witnesses quiet and truth buried. Underneath the financial records was the transcript of Mikhail's original statement, the one that never made it into the official report. Serena read it twice, her coffee going cold beside her. I was outside the warehouse on my break when I saw Carlos Mendoza arrive. I know Mendoza because he inspects our facility every month. He was carrying containers that looked heavy. I asked if he needed help, and he told me to go home early, that there was a private meeting happening. I thought it was strange, but I didn't question it. Mendoza is city official. 20 minutes later, Damien Crowe arrived with 2 associates. I recognized Crowe from photographs in the newspaper. He went inside the warehouse. 10 minutes after that, Mendoza left driving very fast. When the fire started, I tried to call 911, but my phone had no signal. Later, I realized someone had been jamming communications in the area. I saw Crowe and his men pulling people from the building. I saw Thomas Vale, the night foreman, helping them. Vale went back inside 3 times. The third time, the roof collapsed. Crowe tried to go in after him, but his men held him back. After the fire, a man came to my apartment. He said if I told police what I saw, my family in Ukraine would be killed. He gave me a new statement to memorize. He paid me $50,000. I was scared, so I agreed. I am ashamed. But I have a daughter I have not seen in 8 years. I could not risk her life for truth. The statement ended there. No signature, just Mikhail's words typed on a page that had been hidden for 3 years. Serena read the last paragraph again. I could not risk her life for truth. How many people had made that same calculation? How many witnesses had been threatened or paid or scared into silence? How many pieces of evidence had been destroyed or altered or buried? And how much of the case she'd built against Damien Crowe was based on those lies? The waitress came by again. You want that food, honey? Or should I just leave you with the coffee? Just coffee. Rough night? Rough 3 years. The waitress nodded like she understood and moved on. Serena checked her watch. 6:23 a.m. 18 hours until midnight. 18 hours until she met Damien at Pier 23 with evidence that would either destroy him or exonerate him. She still didn't know which one she wanted. Her phone rang. Actual call this time, not text. The number showed as private. She answered. Yeah. You need to stop digging. The voice was male, young, nervous. Seriously, stop. Who is this? Doesn't matter. What matters is people are noticing. People who don't want you noticing them back. Background noise, traffic, maybe a truck stop. I'm calling because I owe your dad. He helped me get a job at the docks 3 years ago. Good man. Didn't deserve what happened. Serena sat up straighter. You worked at Warehouse 7? Yeah, night of the fire. I was supposed to be there. Switched shifts with your brother because I had a date. Pause. Marcus took my shift. If I'd been there instead, it wasn't your fault. I know, but I feel guilty anyway. The voice got quieter. Listen, what Mikhail told you is true. I was one of the people Crowe and your dad pulled out. I saw everything. Saw Mendoza setting the fire. Saw Crowe trying to stop it. Saw your father running back in to save people. Then why didn't you tell the police? Because Mendoza's people visited me in the hospital. Told me if I talked, my little sister would have an accident. She was 9 years old. What was I supposed to do? Bitterness in his voice. So I kept quiet. Took the settlement money. Tried to forget. What's your name? Can't tell you that, but I can tell you this. Meeting Crow tonight is dangerous, not because he'll hurt you, because other people know you're getting close to truth. People who worked with Mendoza, people who want the harbor fire to stay buried. Like who? City officials, cops, judges. Mendoza wasn't working alone. He had a whole network. And when he died, someone else took over. Someone who's been watching you for weeks. Ice water down her spine. How do you know they're watching me? Because I'm part of the network. Low level. I run errands, deliver packages, keep my mouth shut. And yesterday I delivered a package to a surveillance team camped outside your apartment. They've got photos of you, Serena. Photos at the club. Photos at Mikhail's building. Photos from this morning. The diner suddenly felt too exposed, too bright. Serena scanned the other customers, truckers, night shift workers, one guy in a suit reading a newspaper. Any of them could be watching. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because your dad saved my life, and because I'm tired of being scared. The voice cracked. Mendoza's been dead 3 years, but his organization is still running, still hurting people, still covering up crimes. Someone needs to stop it. And you think I can? I think you're the only one crazy enough to try. Sound of a truck horn in the background. Meeting Crow tonight might be your only chance. He's got resources, connections, power. If you convince him to help, maybe together you can burn down what's left of Mendoza's network. Why would Crow help me? Because the harbor fire haunts him. Everyone who works for him knows it. He doesn't talk about it, but it's there, like a wound that won't heal. You give him a chance for closure, he might take it. Serena's mind was racing. The surveillance team outside my apartment, who do they work for? Don't know names, but I know they're cops. Off duty, getting paid under the table. They're waiting for you to lead them to the evidence you've been collecting. Soon as they know where it is, you're dead and the evidence disappears. How soon? Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Depends on how patient they are. Pause. You need to hide. Get off the grid until tonight. And when you meet Crow, bring everything, all your evidence, all your proof. Make him understand what's at stake. And if he doesn't believe me, then you're dead anyway. At least this way you tried. The line went quiet for a moment. Your father was a good man, Serena. He died a hero. Don't waste his sacrifice chasing the wrong enemy. The call ended. Serena sat in the booth staring at her phone until the waitress came by a third time and asked if everything was okay. She paid in cash, left a tip she couldn't afford, and walked out into morning light that felt like an interrogation lamp. The street was busy now, commuters heading to work, delivery trucks making rounds, normal people living normal lives while Serena tried to figure out how to survive the next 18 hours. She couldn't go home, surveillance team waiting, couldn't go to friends, didn't have any left, couldn't go to police. They were part of the problem. Which left one option, find somewhere to hide until midnight, then meet Damien Crow, and pray he didn't kill her on sight. The storage facility on the south side of the Harbor District charged $8 a day for a climate-controlled unit and didn't ask for ID if you paid cash. Serena had rented Unit 237 2 years ago as insurance, a place to keep backup evidence where no one would think to look. She took 3 different buses to get there, switched routes twice, and spent 20 minutes walking in circles to make sure no one was following before she finally entered the building. The facility was a maze of identical corridors lit by fluorescent tubes that hummed like dying insects. Her unit was on the second floor, tucked between someone's furniture storage and what sounded like a pottery studio. Inside the unit, a fireproof safe, a sleeping bag, 3 gallons of water, and enough granola bars to survive a week. Also a change of clothes, a burner phone, and a loaded Glock 19 she'd purchased illegally from a pawn shop owner who asked too few questions. Serena had never fired the gun. Wasn't even sure she could if it came down to it, but having it made her feel slightly less helpless in a world designed to crush people like her. She locked the unit door behind her, dragged the safe in front of it as a barricade, and finally let herself collapse against the wall. Her hands were still shaking, had been shaking since she left Mikhail's apartment, since she'd seen the photographs, since her entire understanding of the last 3 years had been ripped apart and reassembled into something unrecognizable. The safe contained 3 backup flash drives with all her evidence against Damien Crow, shipping manifests, financial records, surveillance footage, witness statements, Everything she'd compiled through obsession and rage and the kind of reckless determination that should have gotten her killed a dozen times over. Evidence that was now possibly worthless, or possibly still valuable for a completely different reason. Serena pulled out one of the flash drives and turned it over in her palm. What if she was wrong? What if Mikhail's story was the lie, and her original investigation was correct? What if Damien had orchestrated some elaborate cover-up involving fake photographs and paid witnesses? What if she'd been right all along, and tonight's meeting was just Damien's way of neutralizing the threat she represented? Her head hurt, her eyes burned. She hadn't slept in 26 hours, and wasn't sure she remembered how. The burner phone rang. She stared at it. Nobody had this number. Nobody should even know this phone existed. It kept ringing. On the fifth ring, she answered. "How did you get this number?" "Same way I got your other 3 numbers," Damien Crow's voice said calmly. "You're predictable, Serena. You think you're being careful, but you leave patterns. The bus routes, the timing, the storage facility south of the harbor that charges $8 a day and doesn't ask questions." She stood up, heart hammering. "Are you watching me right now?" "No, but I could be. That's the point." He sounded tired. "We need to move up the meeting. It's 18 hours away, and in 18 hours you'll be dead. The people watching your apartment aren't patient. They're sloppy, which means they're desperate, which means they'll move soon." "How do you know about—" "Because I've been watching them watch you," Damien interrupted. 3 men in a gray sedan parked 2 blocks from your building. They've been there since yesterday afternoon. Off-duty cops working for someone who wants you quiet. Serena's throat went dry. "Who? That's what we need to figure out. But not over the phone. Not in 18 hours. Now." Pause. "There's a construction site on Bleecker and 5th. Abandoned high-rise project. 12th floor is accessible through the service elevator if you know the override code. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Alone. Unarmed. We talk, and then we decide what happens next." "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't, but you're out of options, and we both know it." His voice softened slightly. "I didn't kill your family, Serena, and I think you're starting to believe that. But believing it doesn't keep you alive. So you can sit in that storage unit waiting for people to find you, or you can meet me and we figure this out together." The line went dead. Serena stood in the small space surrounded by her backup plans and emergency supplies and realized Damien was right. She was out of options. The surveillance team knew where she lived. They probably knew about her patterns, her routines, her habits. The only reason they hadn't grabbed her yet was because they didn't know where she kept her evidence. But once they got impatient, once they decided she was more valuable dead than alive, her storage unit wouldn't protect her. And waiting until midnight to meet Damien might mean never making it to midnight at all. She checked the Glock, full magazine, round in the chamber, safety on. She'd never killed anyone before. Hoped she wouldn't have to start today. But she put the gun in her jacket pocket anyway and headed for the construction site on Bleecker and 5th. The building was a steel skeleton wrapped in plastic sheeting that snapped and billowed in the wind like dying lungs. 30 floors of unfinished concrete and exposed rebar, abandoned mid-construction when the developer went bankrupt and the lawsuit started. Perfect place for a clandestine meeting. Or a murder. The service elevator worked exactly like Damien had said. Override code punched into the keypad, shuddering mechanical groan, slow ascent through darkness, broken only by the floor indicators. Serena kept her hand on the gun the whole ride up. 12th floor. Doors opened onto an empty expanse of concrete and construction equipment covered in dust. Windows were just holes in the wall, letting in wind and the sound of the city below. Damien Crow stood near the eastern edge, silhouetted against gray sky, hands in his pockets. Alone. Like he'd promised. Serena stepped out of the elevator with the gun half drawn. "Show me your hands." He raised them slowly. "No weapons. I told you." "People lie." "Yes, but not about this." He turned to face her fully, and for the first time she saw him in daylight, without the club's amber glow softening his features. He looked older than 34. Tired. Lines around his eyes that spoke to nights without sleep and decisions that left scars. "You read Mikhail's file," he said. Not a question. "How do you know about that?" "Because Mikhail contacted me 6 months ago. Told me he was dying. Told me there was someone investigating the harbor fire. Told me I needed to know the truth before I did something I'd regret. Damien lowered his hands slowly. I've had people watching you since then. Not to hurt you, to protect you. Serena laughed, sharp, bitter. Protect me from what? From the same people who killed Carlos Mendoza. From the network he built that's still operating. From the truth that certain people will kill to keep buried. He took a step closer. She raised the gun. He stopped. Serena, I didn't burn that warehouse. I didn't kill your father. But I'm the reason he was there that night. What? The weapons deal, the meeting. It was my operation, my territory, my people. Mendoza tried to destroy me by burning the warehouse and blaming me for the deaths. He almost succeeded. Damien's jaw tightened. But your father, Thomas, he was collateral damage in a war he didn't choose. And that's on me. Not directly, but morally. I brought violence to that warehouse, and innocent people died because of it. So you do feel guilty. Every single day. He said it simply. Without drama, just fact. I see Thomas Vale's face every time I close my eyes. See him running into the flames. See him saving people who weren't his responsibility. See him dying because I wasn't smart enough or careful enough to prevent Mendoza's attack. Serena's hand was shaking again. The gun felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Mikhail said you tried to save him. I tried. I failed. Story of that night. Damien pulled something from his jacket pocket, slowly, showing his movements. A photograph. He held it up so she could see. It showed Damien and another man, younger, leaner, covered in ash. The photo had been taken by someone's phone camera, grainy and dark, but the faces were clear. The other man was Thomas Vale. This was taken 90 seconds before the roof collapsed, Damien said quietly. Your father and I had just pulled 2 workers out. He was going back for more. I tried to stop him, told him the building was gone, that he'd die if he went back. You know what he said? Serena couldn't speak. He said, someone has to. Like it was the simplest truth in the world. Damien's voice cracked slightly. Then he ran back inside and I never saw him alive again. The gun lowered. Serena couldn't hold it up anymore. Her arms felt like they were made of sand. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because you deserve the truth and because I need your help. With what? Finding out who ordered the surveillance on you, finding out who's running what's left of Mendoza's network, and destroying them before they destroy both of us. He put the photograph away. You've spent 3 years investigating me. You've got resources I don't have. Witness contacts, financial trails, evidence I never knew existed. And I've got resources you don't have, protection, money, people who can move in circles you can't access. You want to work together. I want to finish what your father started. Damien met her eyes. He died trying to save people. Let's honor that by taking down the people who killed him. Serena's head was spinning. This wasn't how the meeting was supposed to go. She was supposed to confront him, accuse him, force him to admit his crimes. Instead, she was standing in an abandoned building listening to him talk about redemption and partnership and finishing what her father started. I don't trust you, she said. Good. Trust gets people killed. But we don't need trust. We just need a common enemy. He gestured at the city visible through the empty windows. Somewhere out there, people are planning to silence you. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. You can run, but they'll find you eventually. Or you can fight back with someone who knows how this world works. And what do you get out of this? Peace. He said it like it cost him something. I've spent 3 years building an empire I'm not proud of. Making money from violence I can't control. Becoming the thing I swore I'd never be. The harbor fire showed me what I was turning into. Working with you might show me a way out. Serena holstered the gun. Not because she trusted him, because her hand hurt from holding it, and her head hurt from thinking, and everything hurt from 3 years of carrying rage like a backpack full of stones. If I do this, she said slowly, if I work with you, I need something first. Name it. I need to know what really happened that night. Every detail, every choice you made, every moment from when you arrived at the warehouse until the building collapsed. No lies, no editing, just truth. Damien nodded. All right, but not here. Somewhere safer, somewhere they can't listen. Where? I own a shipping warehouse on Pier 19, private, secure. We can talk there without being interrupted. He pulled out his phone. I'll send a car. No, I'll get there myself. They're watching you. Then let them watch me go somewhere you own. Maybe it'll make them nervous. She headed for the elevator, then stopped. One more thing. Yeah? You said you had people protecting me for 6 months. If that's true, why didn't they stop the surveillance team outside my apartment? Damien's expression darkened. Because the surveillance team showed up 2 days ago, and the 3 men I had watching you disappeared the same night. Pause. I found one of them this morning, dead, throat cut, professional work. The elevator suddenly seemed very far away. Someone's making a move, Damien continued. Someone who knows we're getting close to meeting. Someone who wants both of us dead before we can compare notes. Who? That's what we're going to find out. He moved toward the opposite stairwell. Pier 19, 2 hours. Come armed. And Serena, she looked back. If I'd wanted you dead, you'd have been dead 9 months ago. Remember that. Then he disappeared down the stairs, and Serena was alone in the empty building with wind howling through the walls and her father's ghost whispering, "Someone has to." She didn't go straight to Pier 19. Instead, she circled the harbor district for 90 minutes, changing buses, doubling back, checking reflections in store windows for faces that appeared more than once. Basic counter-surveillance that probably wouldn't work against professionals, but made her feel slightly less helpless. No one followed. Or if they did, they were good enough that she couldn't spot them. The storage facility was her next stop. She retrieved the fireproof safe, loaded it into a stolen shopping cart she found behind a grocery store, and wheeled it 6 blocks to a FedEx office. Inside the safe, all 3 flash drives with her evidence. She packed them into separate express envelopes addressed to 3 different lawyers in 3 different cities, insurance policies she'd set up 2 years ago. If she died in the next 24 hours, the evidence would reach people who could use it, maybe, hopefully. Probably not, but she had to try. Then she walked to Pier 19 as the afternoon sun turned the harbor water into hammered gold and seagulls screamed overhead like warnings. The warehouse looked exactly like the kind of building where people got murdered. Rusted corrugated metal, broken windows, faded letters on the side that used to say something about shipping but were now just ghostly outlines. Chain link fence with a padlock that looked serious but opened when Serena tested it. Unlocked. Waiting for her. She drew the Glock and pushed through the gate. Inside the warehouse was surprisingly clean. Concrete floor swept bare. Metal shelving units that looked new. LED lighting fixtures that hummed quietly overhead. And in the center of the space, a folding table with 2 chairs. Damien sat in one of them. Vincent Torres stood behind him with arms crossed, and an expression that suggested he'd very much like to shoot Serena in the face. "You said alone," Serena called from the doorway. "I said unarmed," Damien corrected. "Vincent's here for protection. Mine and yours." "I don't need protection from you." "Maybe not from me." Vincent's voice was gravel over broken glass. "But the 3 cars parked 2 blocks away watching this warehouse? Yeah. You need protection from them." Serena's stomach dropped. "You led them here." "We didn't have to," Damien said calmly. "They were already following you. We just made it obvious where you were going." He gestured at the empty chair. "Sit. We need to talk fast because in about 20 minutes those watchers are going to get brave enough to make a move." "What kind of move?" "The kind that ends with this warehouse on fire and both of us dead inside." He pulled out a tablet and turned it to show her. Security camera footage from outside. 3 sedans parked in different positions, occupants visible through the windshields. Men with earpieces and shoulder holsters badly concealed under jackets. Not professional surveillance. Professional killers trying to look like surveillance. "They're waiting for backup," Vincent added. "Waiting for enough bodies to rush the building from multiple angles. We've got maybe 15-20 minutes before they move." Serena finally approached the table but didn't sit. "So, what's your plan?" "Depends on what you brought me." Damien gestured at her jacket. "You said you had evidence. Let's see it." She pulled out Mikhail's envelope and dropped it on the table. Damien opened it carefully, spreading the contents like he was handling ancient manuscripts. His eyes moved across the photographs, the financial records, the transcript of Mikhail's original statement. When he finished reading, he was quiet for a long moment. "Carlos Mendoza," he finally said. "I knew he was dirty, but I didn't realize how deep. Deep enough to fake an entire investigation. Deep enough to have current law enforcement on payroll. Damien tapped one of the financial statements. These accounts are still active. Money's still moving through them, which means someone took over Mendoza's network after he died. Who? That's the question. He looked up at Serena. You've been investigating this for 3 years. Any guesses? She thought about it, thought about all the pieces that never quite fit, all the witnesses who disappeared or refused to talk, all the evidence that vanished from official records. Someone with access to police files, she said slowly. Someone who could edit reports and bury evidence. Someone in a position of authority. Captain Richard Hayes, Vincent said suddenly. Damien and Serena both looked at him. Head of the Harbor District Precinct, Vincent continued. He was first responder the night of the fire. He signed off on the electrical fault conclusion, and he's been promoted 3 times in 3 years despite a record of closed cases that should have been investigated further. You think Hayes took over Mendoza's operation? I think Hayes was always part of it. Mendoza was the face, Hayes was the muscle. When Mendoza died, Hayes stepped up. Vincent pulled out his own phone, showed them a photo. Middle-aged cop with iron gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He's got 40 officers under his command. Half of them are dirty. And he's got connections to City Hall, the DA's office, and 3 federal judges. Serena felt cold spread through her chest. If Hayes is running the network, then the surveillance team outside my apartment is his people, Damien finished. And the team watching this warehouse right now, also his people. He knows we're meeting. He knows we're comparing information, and he's decided we're too dangerous to let live. So what do? Damien smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We give him what he wants, which is a fire, a tragedy. 2 bodies burned beyond recognition. He stood up from the table. Vincent's been preparing this warehouse for the last hour. Accelerant in the walls, delayed igniters, security footage showing you and me entering but never leaving. When it goes up, it'll look like exactly what Hayes expects. A meeting gone wrong, evidence destroyed, problem solved. Serena's hand drifted toward her gun. And where will we actually be? Somewhere else. Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can figure out our next move without people trying to kill us every 5 minutes. He gestured toward the back of the warehouse. There's a tunnel that connects to the sewer system. It'll take us under the street, come up 3 blocks away in a building I own. By the time Hayes realizes we're not dead, we'll be gone. And then what? Then we do what you've been doing for 3 years. We investigate. We gather evidence, we build a case. But this time we do it together, with resources you don't have and knowledge I don't have. Damien met her eyes. Your father died trying to save people. Let's save people by destroying the corruption that killed him. It was a good speech, almost convincing. But Serena had spent 3 years learning not to trust anyone. How do I know this isn't a trap? She asked. How do I know you're not planning to get me in that tunnel and put a bullet in my head? You don't. Damien's voice was flat, honest. But you're smart enough to know that if I wanted you dead, you'd be dead already. I've had a dozen opportunities. Hell, Vincent could drop you right now before you even got that gun out of your pocket. Vincent shifted slightly, confirming the threat. But I don't want you dead, Damien continued. I want the same thing you want. Justice, closure, peace. And the only way either of us gets that is by working together against people who are bigger and meaner and more connected than both of us combined. Outside, the sound of car doors opening. Voices carried on the wind. The backup Vincent had predicted was arriving. Decide now, Damien said, because in about 90 seconds, this warehouse is going to become a war zone. Serena looked at the envelope on the table, looked at the photographs of her father running into flames, looked at Damien Crowe, the man she'd spent 3 years hating, offering her an alliance she never expected. She thought about her father saying someone has to. She thought about Marcus laughing at terrible jokes. She thought about 3 years of rage and grief and obsession leading to this exact moment in an empty warehouse with killers closing in and only one way out. All right, she said. We run. We hide. And then we burn Hayes's world to the ground. Damien nodded once. Vincent? Light it up. Vincent pressed something on his phone. Somewhere in the walls, igniters clicked to life. Serena smelled accelerant, sharp, chemical, wrong. Move, Damien said. They ran toward the back of the warehouse as the first flames started licking up the walls behind them. Vincent pulled open a floor grate hidden under a pile of pallets, metal ladder descending into darkness. "Go," he ordered. Serena went. The tunnel was exactly as horrible as she'd imagined. Low ceiling, standing water, rats scattering in the flashlight beam Vincent carried. They moved fast, splashing through filth, while behind them the warehouse groaned and roared like a dying animal. Voices echoed down the tunnel, shouting, gunfire. Hayes's people had rushed the building. Too late. 3 blocks. 4 blocks. Vincent counted them off quietly. Finally, he stopped at another ladder leading up. "Here!" They climbed. Metal rungs slick with God knows what. Serena's hands kept slipping. Above her, Damien pushed open a grate and pulled himself through. Then he reached down and hauled her up like she weighed nothing. They emerged in the basement of what looked like an office building. Clean, well-lit, normal. Vincent came up last, sealed the grate, and pulled out his phone. "Fire department's responding to the warehouse. Police are on scene, and—" He smiled coldly. "Captain Hayes just arrived personally to oversee the investigation." "Perfect," Damien said. "Let him think we're dead. Gives us time to work." Serena was shaking. Adrenaline crash, delayed terror. The realization that she'd just faked her own death and was now completely off the grid with a man she'd wanted to kill 24 hours ago. "What happens now?" she managed. Damien looked at her with those silver-gray eyes that had haunted her nightmares for 3 years. "Now we disappear," he said. "Now we plan. And now we start building a case against Richard Hayes that will destroy him and everyone connected to him." He offered his hand. Serena stared at it for a long moment. The hand of the man she'd thought was her enemy, now extended in partnership. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Someone has to." She took Damien's hand. "All right," she said. "Let's burn it all down." And somewhere above them, Captain Richard Hayes stood outside a burning warehouse, watching firefighters pull 2 bodies from the wreckage, believing his problem had been solved. He had no idea that his real problem was just beginning. The safe house was a penthouse suite 30 floors above the harbor, with windows that overlooked the city like a god surveying ants. Serena stood at the glass, watching emergency lights pulse red and blue in the distance where the warehouse still burned, and tried to convince herself she'd made the right choice. She'd just faked her own death, partnered with a criminal kingpin, committed arson. And somewhere in that burning building, 2 bodies that weren't hers or Damien's were being pulled from the wreckage while Captain Richard Hayes congratulated himself on solving a problem. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger. Dark circles under her eyes, hair still damp from the tunnel, jacket smelling like accelerant and sewage. 3 years of hunting Damien Crowe, and now she was standing in his luxury apartment drinking his expensive whiskey while he planned their next move. The world had stopped making sense somewhere around dawn and hadn't started again. "You need to eat something," Vincent said from behind her. He'd appeared with a sandwich on a plate like he was suddenly her concerned uncle instead of the man who'd had his hand on his gun for the entire tunnel escape. "Not hungry?" "Eat anyway. You're running on adrenaline and spite. That runs out. You're useless." Serena turned from the window. The penthouse was minimalist. Expensive furniture in neutral colors, art on the walls that probably cost more than her childhood home. Technology everywhere. Damien sat at a glass desk across the room with 3 monitors showing security camera feeds, news broadcasts, and what looked like financial data streaming in real time. He'd changed clothes. Black shirt, dark pants, looking less like a crime lord and more like a tech CEO working late. The transformation was unsettling. "How long do we have?" Serena asked. Damien didn't look up from the screens. "Before Hayes figures out the bodies aren't ours. Maybe 12 hours if we're lucky. 6 if we're not. He'll run DNA, check dental records, and realize he's been played. And then? Then he tears the city apart looking for us. Which is why we need to move fast." He finally turned to face her. "I've been going through your evidence, the flash drives you mailed to yourself, the files Mikhail gave you, the witness statements you collected. It's good work, Serena. Better than anything my people put together. But it's all circumstantial. Financial records that could be explained away. Witness testimony from people who are either dead, missing, or too scared to testify. Security footage that a good lawyer could argue was doctored." He leaned back in his chair. "We need something concrete, something that directly ties Hayes to Mendoza's network." something a jury can't ignore. Vincent set the sandwich down on the desk in front of Serena with the kind of emphasis that said, "Eat it or I'll make you." She picked it up to avoid the confrontation and took a bite. Turkey and cheese, somehow still warm. Her stomach twisted with hunger she hadn't acknowledged. "There's one thing," she said around the mouthful, "one piece I never could track down." Damien's eyebrows raised. "Which is?" "The night of the fire, someone jammed communications in the area. Mikal mentioned it. Other witnesses mentioned it. Cell phones stopped working. Radio traffic got disrupted. It wasn't an accident. It was coordinated." "Military-grade equipment," Vincent added. "Not something you buy at Radio Shack." "Exactly. And that kind of gear requires permits, licensing, paper trails." Serena pulled out her phone. Not a real phone. A burner she'd activated 2 hours ago. She opened a file she'd encrypted and saved years ago. "I tracked the purchase to a company called Sentinel Security Solutions, private military contractor. They sold a communications jammer to someone in the Harbor District 3 weeks before the fire." Damien was already typing. His fingers moved across the keyboard like he was conducting an orchestra. "Sentinel Security Solutions, based in Virginia, government contracts, black ops work." More typing. "They're still in business, still selling equipment to people who shouldn't have it." "Can you trace the purchase?" "Give me 20 minutes. He pulled up another screen, this one showing layers of encrypted files and databases that Serena recognized as highly illegal to access. If Hayes or Mendoza bought that jammer, there'll be a record. Shell companies only hide so much. Serena finished the sandwich without tasting it. Her mind was racing ahead to what they'd do with the information once they had it. How to use it. How to leverage it into something that would destroy Hayes instead of just annoying him. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. Damien stopped typing. Vincent's hand drifted toward his weapon like the question itself was a threat. "I told you," Damien said carefully. "The harbor fire changed me. I want—" "No, that's the speech you gave me to get me to trust you. I'm asking the real reason." Serena moved closer to the desk. "You're a criminal. You built an empire on violence and money laundering and God knows what else. Why would you risk that empire to help the daughter of a man who died 3 years ago?" Silence in the penthouse. Just the hum of expensive electronics and the distant sound of the city below. Damien met her eyes. "Because your father saved my life." The words hung in the air like smoke. "What?" Serena whispered. "The photograph I showed you earlier, the one taken 90 seconds before the collapse. What I didn't tell you is what happened right before it." Damien's voice went flat, factual, like he was reading from a police report. "I was trapped under a fallen beam. Couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Fire was closing in, and I was going to burn alive." He stood up from the desk and walked to the window, looking out at the city he controlled. "Thomas Vale pulled me out, used a piece of rebar as a lever and lifted a beam that should have been impossible for one man to move. Then he dragged me outside and told me to get the others out while he went back for more." Pause. "He saved my life. Then he died saving 3 other people, and I've spent every day since trying to figure out how to repay a debt to a dead man." Serena's chest felt tight. "So this is guilt. This is honor." Damien turned back to her. "Your father was a better man than I'll ever be. He died a hero, and his daughter spent 3 years thinking I murdered him. That's a debt I can't repay. But maybe I can help you destroy the people who actually did kill him. That's as close to redemption as someone like me gets." Vincent cleared his throat. "Boss, we got movement." Damien was back at the monitors instantly. Serena moved to see over his shoulder. One of the screens showed traffic camera footage from outside the burned warehouse. Emergency vehicles pulling away, fire marshal's van arriving, and a black SUV with tinted windows parking near the police tape. Captain Richard Hayes stepped out of the SUV. Even through the grainy camera footage, Serena could see the satisfaction on his face. The relief. The joy of a problem solved. "He thinks we're dead," Vincent said. "Good." Damien zoomed in on Hayes talking to the fire marshal, pointing at the ruins, nodding as if receiving confirmation. "Let him celebrate. Gives us more time." But something bothered Serena about the scene, something wrong. She leaned closer to the monitor, studying Hayes' body language. The way he stood, the way he gestured. He wasn't acting like someone who just eliminated a threat. He was acting like someone receiving a status update. He knew, Serena said suddenly. Damien looked at her. Knew what? He knew the bodies weren't ours before the DNA came back. Look at him. He's not relieved. He's not celebrating. He's just checking a box. Her pulse started racing. This was expected. This was planned. You think he wanted us to fake our deaths? I think someone told him we would. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Vincent's gun was out of his holster before Serena even registered the movement. Damien's hand went to a drawer in his desk that definitely contained a weapon. Who else knew about the warehouse plan? Serena demanded. Nobody. Damien's voice was ice. I set it up myself. Vincent helped. No one else. Then how did Hayes know to have his people in position? How did he know exactly when to show up? How did he know? Her phone buzzed. The burner phone. The one nobody had the number to. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Text from unknown number. You should have stayed dead, Serena. Now everyone you love dies instead. Attached was a photograph. Jamie Chen, her former roommate, the one who'd texted her yesterday asking if she was okay. In the photograph, Jamie was bound to a chair in what looked like a warehouse basement, duct tape over her mouth, terror in her eyes. And standing behind her with a gun pressed to her temple was someone Serena recognized. Not from real life. From photographs. From the files she'd been investigating for 3 years. Detective Marcus Reeves, Hayes' second-in-command, the man who'd been first on scene at the harbor fire, the man who'd interviewed witnesses and collected evidence and helped bury the truth. Serena's vision tunneled. The phone almost slipped from her numb fingers. They have Jamie, she managed. Damien was beside her instantly, looking at the image. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went dark and dangerous. Who's Jamie? My friend. From before, Serena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I cut her off 3 years ago. Haven't seen her, haven't talked to her. How did they even? Another text. You have 2 hours. Come to Pier 7, Warehouse 3, alone, unarmed, or she dies screaming. Then, and Serena, we know Damien Crowe is alive too. Tell him if he interferes, we kill everyone in his organization starting with Elena Cross. Vincent was already on his phone making calls. Damien grabbed Serena's shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Breathe, he ordered. Focus. This is a trap. I know it's a trap. She shoved his hands away. But they have Jamie. She has nothing to do with this. She's innocent. She's leverage. That's all she is to them. They're using her to draw you out. Damien's voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. You go to that warehouse, they kill you both. That's how this works. So what am I supposed to do? Let her die? No, we go in smart. We go in prepared. 2 hours, Damien. We don't have time for smart. Serena felt something breaking inside her chest. 3 years of control, 3 years of discipline, 3 years of carefully planned investigation. And now her past was catching up in the form of an innocent woman whose only crime was being Serena's friend. Vincent ended his call. Elena's secure. My people have her in a safe location. But boss, they also grabbed Marcus. Damien went very still. What? Your cousin. They took him from his apartment 20 minutes ago. 2 men. Professional extraction. Same message. You interfere with Serena's retrieval, they kill him. The penthouse was silent except for the hum of electronics and the sound of Serena's heart trying to punch through her ribs. This wasn't a trap. This was total war. Hayes had just declared that everyone connected to them was now a target. Friends, family, associates. No one was safe. How did they know? Serena whispered. How did they know about Jamie? I haven't talked to her in 3 years. How did they know Marcus was your cousin? How did they know Elena was important to you? How did they know any of this? Damien turned back to his monitors and started pulling up files. Security logs, communication records, access histories. Someone told them, he said quietly. Someone with access to my organization and your past. Someone who knew exactly who to target to hurt us both. He pulled up a file that made Vincent curse under his breath. It was a communication log showing encrypted messages sent from inside Damien's network to an external number. Sent over the last 6 months. Hundreds of messages. Each one containing information about Damien's operations, his people, his movements. Someone had been feeding Hayes intelligence for months. Who has access to these systems? Serena asked. 12 people. Inner circle only. Damien's fingers were flying across the keyboard. Vincent, Elena, Marcus, my security chief, my accountant, He stopped. His face went white. On the screen was a photograph pulled from the security logs. Timestamp from 3 hours ago. Location, this penthouse. The photograph showed Elena Cross sitting at this exact desk, accessing these exact files, photographing documents with her phone. Elena. Damien's attorney. His advisor. The woman he trusted with his entire operation. She'd been the leak all along. Vincent made a sound like a wounded animal. That's impossible. Elena's been with us for 8 years. She's apparently working for Hayes. Damien's voice was hollow. How long? According to these logs? At least 18 months. Serena pulled up more files, her investigator instincts taking over despite the panic. She's been feeding them everything. Your shipping routes, your financial accounts, your security protocols, She stopped at one file. Your connection to Adrian Mercer. She's the one who gave Hayes your old identity. Why would she do this? Vincent's gun was in his hand like he was looking for someone to shoot. We made her rich. We protected her. She had everything. Not everything. Damien pulled up another file. This one showed financial records in Elena's name, offshore accounts, property deeds, investments. Look at the dates. Every major payment to her comes right after she provided Hayes with intel. She wasn't working for him out of ideology. She was being paid. Serena felt sick. How much? 15 million over 18 months. Damien closed the file. That's how much my trust cost. The room spun slightly. Serena grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. Elena had been feeding Hayes information about Damien's organization while simultaneously helping Damien plan their investigation into Hayes. She'd been playing both sides, collecting money from Hayes while pretending to help Damien, and now she was supposedly in protective custody with Vincent's people. Where's Elena right now? Serena asked. Vincent was already on his phone. Calling the security team. Pause. No answer. Try again. I'm trying. They're not... Vincent's face went gray. Boss, something's wrong. Damien pulled up another monitor showing GPS tracking for his security personnel. 6 dots representing 6 bodyguards, all of them in the same location, a building on the south side of the harbor. None of them moving. He made a call, put it on speaker. It rang 8 times before someone answered. This is Detective Marcus Reeves, Harbor District Police. The voice was smooth, professional. I'm afraid the security team you're trying to reach is currently in our custody. Breaking and entering, unlawful detention, assault on a police officer. They'll be held pending arraignment. Damien's knuckles went white around the phone. Where's Elena? Ms. Cross is safe. She contacted us about feeling threatened by her employer. We've taken her into protective custody. Pause. But you already knew that, didn't you, Mr. Crow? Or should I call you Adrian Mercer? Put Hayes on. Captain Hayes is busy, but he wanted me to give you a message. Sound of paper rustling. He says thank you for making this so easy. He says Elena provided everything he needed to dismantle your organization. And he says, if you want your cousin back alive, you'll deliver Serena Vale to Pier 7 within 2 hours. Otherwise, Marcus dies. Then Jamie dies. Then we start working through everyone else you've ever cared about. The line went dead. Serena stared at the phone, at Damien, at Vincent. She played us, Serena whispered. From the beginning. She knew I was investigating you. She knew Mikhail was dying. She knew we'd eventually meet, and she fed all of it to Hayes so he could set this trap. Not just a trap. Damien's voice was dangerous. Controlled fury barely contained. A complete dismantling. Hayes doesn't just want us dead. He wants my organization destroyed, my people in custody, my assets seized. Elena gave him everything he needed to do it legally. Why would she betray you for money? You paid her more than Hayes could. Because Hayes offered her something I couldn't. Damien pulled up one more file. This one showed an immunity agreement, signed by the district attorney, countersigned by a federal prosecutor. Elena gets to keep her money, avoid prosecution for her involvement in my criminal activities, and walk away clean. All she had to do was help Hayes destroy me and everyone connected to me, including Serena, including the investigation into the harbor fire. including any chance of justice for Thomas and Marcus Vale. "We're done," Vincent said flatly. "Security team arrested, Elena turned, hostages taken. We can't fight this. We need to run." "Run where?" Serena demanded. "They have Jamie. They have your cousin. They have evidence against Damien that Elena handed them. Where exactly do you think we can run?" "Better question," Damien said quietly, "is what exactly do they want? They told me to deliver you to Pier 7. Why? To kill me? Obviously. They could have killed you at the warehouse, could have killed you 100 times over the last 3 years. Why specifically demand your delivery now?" He started pacing. "Hayes wants something. Something he thinks you have. Something Elena couldn't give him." Serena thought about it, thought about the evidence she'd collected, the flash drive she'd mailed, the files she'd encrypted. Then it hit her. "The jammer," she said. "The communications equipment used the night of the fire. Elena didn't know I tracked it. It's not in any of my files. It's only in my head." "And Hayes knows about it?" "He must. Otherwise, why would he need me alive?" She pulled up the file on her burner phone. "I have the purchase records. I have the shell company that bought it. I have testimony from witnesses about the jamming. If that evidence goes public, it directly ties Hayes to the Harbor Fire conspiracy. Proves he wasn't just covering it up. He was actively involved." Damien stopped pacing. "That's why he wants you, not to kill you. To find out what you know about the jammer and destroy the evidence before it surfaces. Which means he's scared. Which means we have leverage." Damien turned to Vincent. "How many people do we have left on the outside?" "Maybe a dozen, low-level, street crew, not enough for a tactical assault." "Not assault, extraction." Damien pulled up a map on one of the monitors showing the harbor district. "Pier 7, Warehouse 3. I know that building. It's got 3 entrances, 2 loading docks, and a sewer access from the old underground system. The same system we used to escape earlier? Connected to it. Hayes is using my own infrastructure against me." Damien's smile was cold. "But he doesn't know I've mapped every inch of that system. Doesn't know about the maintenance tunnels. Doesn't know about the emergency exits." Serena saw where this was going. "You want to trade me for the hostages. I want to make Hayes think we're trading you. Actually, we're going to extract everyone and burn his operation to the ground. With 12 street-level guys against however many corrupt cops Hayes has? With strategy, with knowledge of the terrain, and with the one thing Elena couldn't give Hayes." Damien looked at Serena. "You. The real you. Not the broken woman chasing revenge. The investigator who spent 3 years building a case against me without getting caught once. The woman smart enough and disciplined enough to work in my club for 9 months without me suspecting a thing. I'm not a soldier." "No. You're something better. You're invisible." He pulled up security footage from the warehouse they'd burned earlier. Showed Serena moving through it before the fire. "Look at how you move. Like you're not even there. Like you're part of the background. That's a skill, Serena. That's an asset. And that's how we're going to get into that warehouse without Hayes seeing us coming." Vincent was shaking his head. "This is suicide. Even if we extract the hostages, Hayes will just grab more. He's got the law on his side. He's got resources. He's got Elena feeding him intel about everything we plan to do next." "Not anymore, he doesn't." Damien pulled up the communication log showing Elena's messages to Hayes. "She thinks we don't know she's the leak, which means we can feed her false information, make her think we're doing one thing while we're actually doing something else. She's in police custody. She's in Hayes's protective custody, which means she still has access to communications, still thinks she's playing both sides." Damien started typing rapidly. "I'm going to send Elena an encrypted message. Tell her I'm planning to surrender myself to Hayes in exchange for the hostages. Tell her to negotiate the terms." "And what's the actual plan?" "The actual plan is we use the 2 hours Hayes gave us to gather every piece of evidence we have about the harbor fire, the jammer purchase, Mendoza's network, and Hayes's involvement. We compile it into a package that even a corrupt DA can't ignore. And then we deliver it to the one person Elena can't reach." "Who?" Damien smiled. "Sarah Chen, federal prosecutor. She's been trying to build a RICO case against my organization for 18 months. Can't stand me, can't be bought, and she hates corrupt cops more than she hates criminals." Serena felt something shift in her chest. Hope. Dangerous and fragile, but real. "You're going to turn yourself in. I'm going to make a deal. My testimony and evidence about Hayes' network in exchange for immunity for the harbor fire. I walk on that. They can have everything else. He met her eyes. But first we need to get Jamie and Marcus out alive, because if they die, Hayes can claim we're lying about everything else. How do we extract them without starting a war? We don't extract them. Damien pulled up architectural plans for Pier 7. We make Hayes bring them to us. Vincent leaned forward to study the plans. You want to hit him during the exchange. I want to make him think he's in control right up until the moment he realizes he's not. Damien pointed to different locations on the blueprint. Here's how it works. Serena goes to the meeting point alone like Hayes demanded, but she's wearing a wire. Everything Hayes says gets recorded and transmitted to Sarah Chen in real time. Hayes will search me for wires. Not if you're not actually wearing one. Damien pulled open a drawer and removed what looked like a regular button. Microtransmitter. Looks like part of your jacket. Battery life of 4 hours. Range of 2 miles. Hayes's people won't find it because they're not looking for technology that doesn't exist on the civilian market yet. Where did you get military surveillance tech? Same place Hayes got his communications jammer. I just didn't use mine to murder 17 people. He handed her the button. You sew this into your jacket. You go to the meeting. You get Hayes talking. You get him to admit his connection to Mendoza, to the fire, to the cover-up. You get it all on record. And if he just shoots me instead? He won't. He needs to know what you know about the jammer first, which gives us time. Time for what? Vincent and my remaining people will be in the tunnels below the warehouse. When Hayes brings out the hostages for the exchange, we extract them from below. Gas grenades through the floor vents, chaos in the dark. We grab Jamie and Marcus and disappear while Hayes' people are trying to figure out what happened. Serena studied the plans. It was insane. Relied on too many things going right. Required perfect timing and complete trust in people she'd only just started working with. But it was also the only option that didn't end with everyone she cared about dead. What about Elena? She asked. Damien's expression went cold. Elena's already chosen her side. When this is over, she'll get exactly what she deserves. Which is federal charges for conspiracy, racketeering, and accessory to murder. Because once we expose Hayes, we expose everyone who helped him, including his star witness. He sent the fake message to Elena about surrendering himself. She thinks she's getting immunity. Actually, she's getting a 20-year sentence. Serena wanted to feel satisfied by that, wanted to enjoy the idea of Elena Cross rotting in prison for her betrayal. Instead, she just felt tired. 3 years of hunting the wrong man, 3 years of building a case on lies. And now she was partnering with that man to take down the actual conspiracy while hoping her friend didn't die in the crossfire. Her phone buzzed again. Text from Hayes' number. Clock's ticking, Serena. 90 minutes left. Jamie's getting anxious. Would be a shame if Reeves got trigger happy. Attached was another photo. Jamie, still bound, but this time with a fresh bruise on her face. Someone had hit her. Rage flooded through Serena's chest. Hot and sharp and cleansing. Hayes wanted to play games with innocent lives. Wanted to use people as leverage. Wanted to win through fear and violence. Fine. She'd spent 3 years learning how to be patient, how to be disciplined, how to hunt monsters without becoming one. Tonight she'd find out if she'd succeeded. I'm in, she said. Let's do this. Damien nodded. Vincent, call our people. Tell them to gear up and meet at Staging Point Charlie in 45 minutes. Full tactical, non-lethal weapons only. We're going loud, but we're not going to prison for murder. What about Sarah Chen? How do we get the evidence to her? Already done. Damien showed his phone. I sent her an encrypted package 30 seconds ago. Financial records, witness statements, security footage, everything except the jammer purchase info. That's your insurance policy. You tell Hayes you'll trade it for the hostages. You get him talking. The wire picks it up. Chen gets probable cause to raid his operation. And if something goes wrong? If something goes wrong, the package auto-sends to 6 major news organizations and 3 federal agencies. Hayes' world burns regardless of whether we survive. He met her eyes. But we're going to survive. Because your father didn't save my life, so I could waste it dying in a warehouse ambush. Serena felt something crack in her chest. 3 years of hate. 3 years of rage. 3 years of viewing Damien Crowe as the enemy. And now he was her best chance at justice. My father would have liked you, she said quietly. No, he wouldn't. I'm a criminal who built an empire on violence. Damien's smile was sad, but maybe he'd have respected what I'm trying to become. Vincent cleared his throat. We need to move. 45 minutes to staging, 15 to gear up, 15 to get into position. That leaves us 15 minutes of cushion before Hayes' deadline. Then let's move. They moved. Ba-mampires. 42 minutes later, Serena stood in an alley 6 blocks from Pier 7 while Vincent sewed the microtransmitter into her jacket collar using thread that looked normal but was actually reinforced with copper wire to boost the signal. Don't touch it, he said. Don't adjust your collar. Don't fidget with your jacket. The moment you start messing with it, Hayes' people will wonder why. I know. And don't try to be a hero. You get Hayes talking, you stall for time, and you wait for us to make our move. You do not engage. You do not fight. You do not... Vincent! She grabbed his hand to stop the sewing. I've been undercover in a criminal organization for 9 months. I know how to play a role. He looked at her for a long moment. Your father saved my life too. You know that? Serena blinked. What? The night of the fire, I was one of Damien's people inside the warehouse. Beam fell on me same as the boss. Your father pulled me out first, then went back for Damien, then went back for 3 more people. Vincent's voice went rough. I wouldn't be here if Thomas Vale hadn't been a stubborn bastard who refused to let people die on his watch. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I figured you'd shoot me for working with the man you blamed for his death. He finished the last stitch and bit off the thread. But now you know the truth. Now you know Damien, and I owe your father everything. So when I tell you we're going to get Jamie out alive, I mean it. We're not letting another innocent person die because of this war. Serena's throat was tight. Thank you. Thank me when everyone's safe. He stepped back and examined his work. Transmitter's active. Chen's team is monitoring. Everything you say from now on is being recorded. Then I better make it good. Vincent handed her a small plastic case. Inside was a white pill. What's this? Cyanide. He said it flatly. If Hayes decides to torture you for information instead of trading for hostages, if things go bad and there's no extraction possible, you take that and it's over in 30 seconds. Serena stared at the pill, at the final escape hatch, at the acknowledgement that this plan could fail in ways that made death preferable to the alternative. She closed the case and put it in her pocket. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's hope. Damien appeared from the other end of the alley. He'd changed again. Tactical gear, dark colors, night vision goggles pushed up on his forehead. Behind him were 11 men in similar gear, his remaining crew, street-level operators who'd just been elevated to Special Forces status. Teams in position, Damien said. Tunnel access secured, gas grenades ready. We're green across the board. What about Hayes' numbers? Thermal imaging shows approximately 15 people inside the warehouse, 10 at ground level, 5 in the upper offices. 2 hostages in the center of the main floor. He pulled up a tablet showing the thermal overlay. 2 bright spots in the middle of the building surrounded by others. That's Jamie and Marcus. Serena studied the layout. 15 against 12, not great odds. We're not fighting them. We're extracting the hostages and disappearing before they realize what happened. Damien checked his watch. You've got 8 minutes to get to the meeting point. We need 5 minutes to get into position below the warehouse. That gives us a 3-minute window to coordinate. What's the signal? When you hear me say your father's name over the wire, you hit the floor. Immediately. Don't think. Don't hesitate. Just drop. That's when the gas comes through the vents. And if Hayes has gas masks, then we switch to plan B, which is we shoot everyone who isn't a hostage and deal with the legal consequences later. Damien's expression was grim. But that's last resort. Plan A is clean extraction. No casualties. Everyone walks away. Except Hayes. Hayes is Chen's problem once we hand her the evidence. Let the federal prosecutor tear him apart legally. He met Serena's eyes. You ready? No. She wasn't ready. She'd never be ready. But Jamie was tied to a chair with a gun to her head, and Marcus was somewhere in that building, and the clock was ticking down toward disaster. I'm ready. Good. Damien squeezed her shoulder once. Brief, brotherly. Your father was a hero. Tonight you honor his memory by being smart instead of brave. You survived this and we finish what we started. Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness with his team like ghosts flowing into shadows. Vincent gave her one last nod and followed. Serena stood alone in the alley for 30 seconds, breathing, centering herself. The wire in her collar felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The cyanide pill in her pocket felt like a loaded gun. She thought about her father running into flames. She thought about Marcus laughing at terrible jokes. She thought about 3 years of grief sharpening her into something dangerous. Then she walked toward Pier 7 to meet the man who'd orchestrated her family's murder and tried to destroy everyone she'd ever loved. And she prayed Damien's plan would work, because if it didn't, a lot of people were about to die. Warehouse 3 on Pier 7 looked like every other abandoned industrial building in the harbor district. Rusted metal siding, broken windows, graffiti covering every surface. But the padlock on the front door was new. So was the surveillance camera above it. Someone had been using this building recently. Serena approached with her hands visible, palms open, showing she was unarmed like Hayes had demanded. The door opened before she reached it. Detective Marcus Reeves stood in the entrance with his service weapon holstered, but his hand resting on it meaningfully. He was younger than she expected, early 30s, clean cut, the kind of cop who looked trustworthy in court testimony. "Arms up," he ordered. She complied. He patted her down professionally, checking for weapons, checking for wires, checking her pockets, her waistband, her boots. His hands found the burner phone. He pulled it out and crushed it under his heel. "Insurance policy," Serena said. "Won't help you." He found the plastic case with the cyanide pill, opened it, examined it, smiled. "Planning for the worst?" "I've been planning for 3 years. Old habit." "Yeah, we know." He pocketed the pill and gestured for her to follow him inside. "Captain wants to talk to you before we discuss the hostages." The warehouse interior was exactly like the thermal imaging had shown. Open floor plan, high ceilings, metal catwalks overhead, and in the center, tied to chairs under portable lights that made them look like performers on a stage, were Jamie Chen and a man Serena didn't recognize but assumed was Marcus, Damien's cousin. Jamie's eyes went wide when she saw Serena. She tried to scream around the duct tape over her mouth. Serena forced herself to look away, to not react, to stay in character as the cold investigator who'd spent 3 years hunting monsters. Captain Richard Hayes stood near the hostages with his arms crossed. He looked exactly like his photographs. Iron gray hair, granite face, the expression of a man who'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. "Serena Vale," he said. His voice was gravel tumbling in a barrel. "The girl who couldn't let go." "Captain Hayes, the cop who murders witnesses and calls it justice." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Careful. You're not in a position to throw accusations. I'm in a position to record them." She tapped her chest. "Everything you say right now is being transmitted to federal prosecutors. You're already done, Hayes. The only question is how many people you take down with you." He laughed. Actually laughed. "You think I don't know about wires? Reeves searched you. You're clean." "Am I? Or did Reeves miss the military-grade microtransmitter sewn into my jacket that doesn't show up on standard detection equipment?" Hayes' smile faltered. Just for a second. But it was enough. "You're bluffing," he said. "Then keep talking. See what happens when Sarah Chen kicks down your door with federal warrants based on recorded confession." Serena took a step closer. "Or we can make a deal. I tell you what I know about the communications jammer. You let the hostages go. Everyone walks away. You don't have any leverage. I have the purchase records for the jammer used the night of the harbor fire. I have testimony from the seller. I have financial trails linking the shell company that bought it directly to you and Carlos Mendoza." She pulled out a flash drive from her pocket, a fake one, empty, just for show. "It's all on here. Evidence Elena Cross couldn't give you because she didn't know I had it." Hayes' expression went cold. "Elena said you were thorough. Elena's a traitor who sold out everyone who trusted her for immunity she's never going to get. But you already know that." Serena held up the flash drive. "This is what you actually want. This is why you needed me alive instead of dead in that warehouse fire. Because this evidence proves you weren't just covering up the harbor fire. You helped plan it." "That's a lie." "Is it? Then why did you jam communications that night? Why did you make sure no one could call for help while Mendoza burned 17 people alive? Why did you alter the investigation reports and bury witness testimony and pay off survivors to keep quiet? Because Carlos Mendoza was building a case against organized crime figures who were destroying this city. The fire was an unfortunate accident that happened during a legitimate operation. Record that, Serena said to The Wire. Captain Hayes just admitted knowledge of police operations the night of the fire that don't appear in any official report. Hayes' jaw tightened. You're not as smart as you think. Smart enough to spend 3 years building a case against Damien Crowe, only to realize you were the real monster all along. She took another step closer. Thomas Vale. Marcus Vale. 14 other innocent people. You killed them to protect Mendoza's operation. And when Mendoza died, you took over his network. You kept running the corruption. You kept murdering anyone who got too close to the truth. I protected this city from criminals who would have torn it apart. You became one of them. Worse than them, because you wore a badge while you did it. Hayes moved so fast, Serena barely saw it. 1 second he was standing near the hostages. The next he had a gun pressed under her chin, forcing her head back. Enough, he said quietly. You want to know what really happened that night? Your father was a witness to a federal operation. He saw things he wasn't supposed to see. So yes, I made sure the building burned. And yes, I made sure there were no survivors to contradict the official story. Not because I'm a monster, because I'm a soldier fighting a war against people you can't even imagine. You're a murderer. I'm a patriot. The gun pressed harder. And you're a loose end I should have tied off 3 years ago. Do it, Serena said. Pull the trigger. Give Sarah Chen the murder confession she needs to destroy your entire network. Because the moment you kill me, this warehouse gets raided by federal agents who've been listening to every word you just said. Hayes' finger tightened on the trigger. Then a voice came from the darkness overhead. She's telling the truth, Captain. You're surrounded. Hayes spun, gun sweeping toward the sound. Too late. Gas grenades dropped from the ceiling vents like deadly rain. They hit the concrete floor with metallic clinks and immediately started vomiting white smoke that filled the warehouse in seconds. Serena hit the floor like Damien had ordered. Gunfire erupted, shouting, chaos. Through the smoke and darkness, she saw figures dropping from the catwalks on ropes, saw Vincent grabbing Jamie and cutting her restraints, saw other team members extracting Marcus while Hayes' cops fired blind into the fog. Someone grabbed Serena's arm. Damien. Move! He shouted over the noise. They ran toward the back of the warehouse as gunfire chewed up the concrete behind them. Someone was screaming. Someone else was calling for backup on a radio. Vincent had Jamie over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. 2 other team members had Marcus between them, half dragging him toward the floor grate that led to the tunnels. Almost there. Then the smoke cleared just enough for Hayes to see them. He didn't shout, didn't warn them, just raised his gun and fired. The bullet caught Vincent in the shoulder. He went down hard, dropping Jamie. She rolled across the concrete, screaming through the duct tape still covering her mouth. Damien returned fire, controlled bursts that forced Hayes into cover. Serena grabbed Jamie and dragged her toward the grate. The girl was hysterical, fighting her, not understanding that this was a rescue. It's me! Serena ripped the tape off her mouth. Jamie, it's me! We're getting you out! Recognition finally hit. Jamie went limp with relief. Vincent was back on his feet, despite the blood pouring from his shoulder. He grabbed Jamie with his good arm and shoved her toward the open grate. Go! Tunnels! Now! Marcus went down first. Then Jamie, then Damien's team members one by one. Serena turned back to help Vincent. That's when Hayes shot him again. This time, center mass. Vincent collapsed like his strings had been cut. No! Damien's scream was inhuman. He charged through the smoke toward Hayes, firing as he moved. Hayes fired back. The bullets found Damien. He went down 6 feet from the grate. Serena didn't think, didn't calculate, just ran back into the smoke and grabbed Damien's jacket, dragging him with strength she didn't know she had. Vincent was crawling toward the grate, one hand pressed to the hole in his chest, leaving a blood trail like a slug. Hayes emerged from the smoke, weapon raised. Enough, he said. Serena looked at him. At the gun. At the man who'd murdered her family and was about to finish what he started. Sarah Chen has everything, she said. Every word you said, every confession, Every admission. You're done, Hayes. Killing us just makes it worse. Federal prosecutor needs witnesses to testify. Dead witnesses can't testify. He aimed at her head. Tell your father I'm sorry it had to end this way. A gunshot, but not from Hayes's weapon. He looked down in surprise at the blood blooming across his shirt, then collapsed sideways, revealing Elena Cross standing behind him with a smoking pistol in her shaking hands. I'm not going to prison for you, Elena whispered. Then she dropped the gun and ran. Serena didn't wait to see where she went. She grabbed Damien and dragged him to the grate, shoved him through, dropped down after him into darkness that smelled like sewage and death. Above them, sirens were screaming. Police, ambulances, maybe federal agents. Below them, in the tunnels that ran beneath the harbor, Damien's team was already moving, carrying Vincent's limp body, herding Jamie and Marcus through the darkness toward exits only they knew about. Serena followed, one hand on Damien's shoulder to keep him upright, blood soaking through her jacket from his wounds. Stay with me, she ordered. Your father, Damien's voice was weak, would have been proud. Shut up, save your strength, we're not done yet. But as they stumbled through the tunnels with Vincent's blood leaving a trail behind them and police radios echoing from above, Serena realized they might actually be done. Hayes was shot, but probably not dead. Elena had fled, but would be caught. The evidence was with Sarah Chen, but without witnesses to testify, it might not be enough. And Damien, the man who'd become her unlikely partner in 48 hours, was bleeding out in a sewer beneath the city he'd once ruled. 3 years of investigation, 3 years of planning, 3 years of hunting the wrong man. And it was all falling apart in the dark beneath Pier 7 while the world burned overhead. The tunnel exit was ahead, daylight, freedom, or maybe just a different kind of trap. Serena didn't know anymore. She just kept moving, dragging Damien toward whatever came next, praying they'd survive long enough to see it. The tunnel exit opened into an abandoned subway station that smelled like 100 years of piss and forgotten dreams. Serena dragged Damien through the rusted turnstile while his blood painted abstract art across the cracked tile floor. Behind them, Vincent's team carried his limp body like pallbearers at a funeral nobody wanted to attend. Keep pressure on it, one of Damien's men, Carlos maybe, or David, Serena couldn't remember, was shouting instructions while trying to stop Vincent's chest wound from turning him into a corpse. Keep pressure or he bleeds out in 3 minutes. Jamie was sobbing against Marcus's shoulder. Marcus looked shell-shocked, eyes vacant, like his brain had checked out somewhere around the moment gas grenades started raining from the ceiling. Damien's breathing was wrong, shallow, rattling. The bullet had caught him high on the left side, might have clipped a lung. Every breath sounded like tearing paper. Stay with me, Serena said for the 3rd time. We're almost out. Out where? Damien's laugh turned into a cough that brought up blood. Hayes knows these tunnels, knows every exit. We're trapped down here. Then we go up, surface level, get lost in the city. Surface is worse, cops everywhere, federal agents. Elena probably already told them where we'd run. He grabbed her wrist with strength that shouldn't have been possible for someone losing blood that fast. You need to leave me. No. Serena, I said no. She pulled him harder, ignoring the way his face went gray with pain. You don't get to play hero after I spent 3 years hating you. You survived this. You testify against Hayes. You helped me finish what we started. What we started got Vincent shot, got Marcus traumatized, got your friend dragged into a war she didn't choose. Damien's eyes were losing focus. I'm poisoned, Serena. Everyone around me dies. Your father knew it. That's why he told me to get out while he went back for more people. My father saved you because he saw something worth saving. Don't prove him wrong now. The subway platform ended at a service ladder leading up to the street. Carlos, definitely Carlos, she saw his name patch now, was already climbing, checking if the coast was clear. He came back down 30 seconds later, shaking his head. 4 patrol cars on the street, cops checking every manhole cover, thermal scanners, dogs. They're hunting us hard. How long before they check this station? Serena asked. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. Carlos looked at Damien, bleeding all over the platform, and Vincent, who'd stopped making noise entirely. Boss, we need medical, real medical, not street clinic bullshit. Vincent's dying and you're not far behind. Hospital means police, one of the other men said. Police means Hayes. Hayes means we all end up dead or in custody. Damien tried to stand on his own and made it approximately 6 inches before his legs gave out. Serena caught him before he cracked his skull on the platform edge. There's one option, Damien said through gritted teeth. One person who might help us, but she's going to demand a price. Who? Sarah Chen. Everyone stared at him like he'd suggested they surrender to Hayes directly. The federal prosecutor? Carlos's voice went up an octave. The woman who's been trying to put you in prison for 2 years, that's Sarah Chen? She wants Hayes more than she wants me, and she needs witnesses alive to testify. Damien fumbled in his jacket pocket with fingers that wouldn't cooperate. Finally extracted a phone, not his regular one, some kind of encrypted satellite device. She gave me this 6 months ago, said to use it if I ever wanted to make a deal. 6 months ago, Serena repeated. You've been planning to flip on Hayes for 6 months? I've been planning to get out of this life for 6 months. The harbor fire showed me what I was becoming. Meeting you showed me why I needed to change. He tried to dial, but his hands were shaking too badly. Here, you do it. Speed dial 2. Serena took the phone. The screen showed a single contact, Lifeline. She pressed dial. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered. This better be good, Crow. I'm in the middle of raiding your former attorney's apartment. This is Serena Vale. Damien Crow is bleeding out in an abandoned subway station with a bullet in his chest. Vincent Torres has maybe 5 minutes before he dies. We have 2 civilian hostages who were kidnapped by Captain Richard Hayes. And we have everything you need to prosecute Hayes, his network, and everyone connected to the harbor fire conspiracy. Silence on the line. Long enough that Serena thought the connection had dropped. Then, where are you? Old Red Line Station, decommissioned in 2019, 3 blocks south of Pier 7. I know it. Don't move. Don't shoot at anyone wearing federal identification. And Serena, Chen's voice went cold. If this is a setup, if Damien Crow is trying to use you to escape custody, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in a cell next to his. It's not a setup. Hayes just tried to murder us all. Elena Cross shot Hayes and fled. Damien's men extracted the hostages, but barely. We need medical attention and protective custody, and we need it 5 minutes ago. You'll have it in 3. The line went dead. Carlos was shaking his head. This is insane. We're trusting a federal prosecutor? She's probably calling SWAT right now. We're going to get raided. We're already trapped, Serena shot back. Hayes has the exits covered. Chen's our only chance. Chen wants the boss in prison. Chen wants Hayes more. Damien just became her star witness. Serena looked at Vincent's pale face, at the pool of blood spreading across the platform, at Damien trying to stay conscious through sheer willpower. We're out of options. This is the play. Jamie finally spoke up, her voice raw from screaming. Who are you people? What the hell is happening? Why did police kidnap me? Why did... She looked at all the blood and started hyperventilating. Marcus put an arm around her. Breathe. Just breathe. We're alive. That's what matters. Alive in a sewer with criminals and corrupt cops, and Jamie's eyes locked on Serena. You disappeared 3 years ago, cut everyone off, and now you're involved in some kind of war? What happened to you? My family was murdered, Serena said flatly. I spent 3 years finding out why. Turns out the answer was bigger than I expected. So you partnered with the Mafia? I partnered with the man I thought killed them. Turns out he tried to save them. She gestured at Damien. And now we're both trying to take down the cop who actually did it. Jamie stared at her like she was a stranger. You've changed. Yeah, I have. The sound of engines overhead. Multiple vehicles, screeching tires, doors slamming. Carlos had his weapon out. Company. Federal or Hayes? Another team member asked. Does it matter? Either way, we're... FBI, we're coming down. The voice echoed down the access tunnel. Weapons on the ground, hands visible. Anyone who shoots gets shot. That's Chen, Damien managed. She kept her word. Or it's a trap. One way to find out. Serena raised her voice. Vincent Torres needs immediate medical attention. Sucking chest wound. He's got maybe 2 minutes. EMTs are coming down now. Don't shoot them. 2 paramedics appeared through the tunnel entrance wearing body armor over their uniforms, hands empty, moving fast. They went straight to Vincent without hesitation. Behind them came Sarah Chen. She was smaller than Serena expected. Asian woman, late 30s, expensive suit covered in Kevlar vest, hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She took one look at the scene, blood everywhere, armed men, hostages, Damien Crowe bleeding on the platform, and smiled like she'd just won the lottery. "Well," she said, "this is quite the prisoner exchange." "We're not prisoners," Damien said. "We're cooperating witnesses. You're cooperating corpses if we don't get you medical attention." Chen gestured and more paramedics flooded in. They went to work on Damien while the first team got Vincent on a stretcher. "Hayes is alive, by the way. Elena Cross shot him twice, but missed anything vital. He's in surgery at Harbor General under guard." "Elena? In the wind. But she won't get far. I've got every federal agent on the eastern seaboard looking for her." Chen pulled out a tablet and started typing. "I've been listening to the wire recording. Everything Hayes said in that warehouse. Everything he admitted to. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I could kiss you, Serena, except that would be inappropriate and I don't actually like you yet. The feeling's mutual. Good. Mutual dislike keeps things professional." Chen looked at Damien. "You want a deal? Here are my terms. You give me everything, every file, every recording, every piece of evidence about Hayes, about Mendoza's network, about the Harbor fire, about your entire criminal enterprise. You testify in open court. You allocute to your own crimes. And in exchange, I'll recommend reduced sentencing on everything except the Harbor fire, which you walk on completely since you didn't actually commit that crime. How much time? 5 to 7 years federal minimum security. White-collar facility. You'd be out in 3 with good behavior." Chen's smile was sharp. "Considering I could put you away for life, that's generous." "And my people? Depends on what they've done. The ones who helped extract civilians tonight? I'm inclined to be lenient. The ones who are running drugs and guns for you? They're going to prison." She looked at Carlos and the others. "But if they cooperate, if they testify, I'll make deals. Nobody needs to do life if they're willing to help me dismantle this entire network." Carlos looked at Damien. "Boss?" Damien was going gray around the edges. The paramedics were working frantically, trying to stabilize him for transport. He met Carlos's eyes and nodded once. "Take the deal," Damien said. "All of you, cooperate, testify. Get out of this life while you still can." "What about you?" "I'm done running. Been done for a while." He looked at Serena. "Your father saved my life so I could do something meaningful with it. Testifying against Hayes, that's meaningful." Chen was typing rapidly. "I need statements from everyone. Starting with you, Serena. You're the key witness. Everything you discovered about the Harbor fire, everything Mikhail Volkov told you, everything Hayes admitted tonight. I need it all on record before defense attorneys start trying to suppress evidence." "Fine. But Jamie and Marcus, they're innocent. They get protective custody. They get relocated if necessary. They don't become targets. Already arranged. Federal witness protection. New identities if they want them. Full security detail until Hayes' network is dismantled." Chen looked at Jamie. "I know this is terrifying. I know you didn't ask for any of this, but you're safe now. And the people who kidnapped you are going to prison for a very long time." Jamie nodded mutely. She looked like she might throw up. The paramedics were loading Damien onto a stretcher. One of them looked at Chen and shook his head slightly, the universal signal for he's not going to make it. "Bullshit," Serena said. "You keep him alive. You do whatever it takes." "We're trying, but try harder." She grabbed the paramedic's arm hard enough to leave marks. "He doesn't get to die before he testifies. He doesn't get to escape this by bleeding out in a subway tunnel. You keep him breathing until we get justice." Chen put a hand on Serena's shoulder. "Let them work. You've done your part. Now let the professionals do theirs. My part isn't finished until Hayes is in prison and everyone who helped him is exposed. Then you better start talking, because I've got federal judges, city councilmen, and half the Harbor District Police Force on my target list, and I need evidence to back up every charge." Chen gestured toward the tunnel exit where more federal agents were securing the perimeter. "We're going to a secure facility. You're going to tell me everything, and then we're going to burn Hayes' world to the ground so thoroughly that he'll wish Elena had aimed better." They moved as a convoy, ambulances for the wounded, armored trucks for the witnesses, federal agents everywhere like ants swarming a dropped sandwich. Serena rode in the back of one of the trucks with Jamie and Marcus, while Chen sat across from them asking questions and recording every answer. "Start at the beginning," Chen said. "The night of the Harbor fire. What do you remember? Serena took a breath and started talking. 3 years of investigation poured out in a flood. Mikhail's testimony. The photographs showing Mendoza setting the fire. The financial records proving payoffs to witnesses. The jammer purchase linking Hayes to the communications blackout. The shell companies. The offshore accounts. The web of corruption that stretched from street-level cops all the way to federal judges. Chen's fingers flew across her tablet, recording everything, cross-referencing with evidence she'd already collected. Elena gave us a lot, Chen said. Before she shot Hayes and ran, she provided financial records, communication logs, evidence of the bribery network, but she didn't have this. She held up her tablet showing Serena's evidence about the jammer. This is the piece that ties Hayes directly to the conspiracy. This proves he wasn't just covering up Mendoza's crime, he was an active participant. Will it be enough? Combined with Hayes's recorded confession from tonight, combined with Damien's testimony about the criminal network, combined with the physical evidence and witness statements? Chen smiled grimly. It's enough to send Hayes and 40 other people to prison for the rest of their lives. The convoy arrived at a federal building downtown. Underground parking garage. Armed guards at every entrance. They were escorted through security checkpoints that made airport screening look casual, then into a conference room that felt like a bunker. Damien was already there, unconscious on a hospital bed with machines beeping around him. Vincent was 2 rooms over in surgery. The doctors had given him a 30% chance of survival. Serena sat at a table and continued talking. Hours passed. Chen brought in other federal agents, other prosecutors, specialists in organized crime and corruption. They asked questions. Serena answered. Sometimes Jamie or Marcus corroborated details. Sometimes Chen pulled up evidence on screens that filled an entire wall. The case against Hayes grew like a tumor, malignant, unstoppable, fed by 3 years of Serena's obsessive investigation and Chen's prosecutorial expertise. Dawn came through the high windows. Serena had been talking for 6 hours straight. Her voice was raw, her head pounded. But she kept going because stopping meant thinking about Vincent dying on an operating table and Damien unconscious with machines breathing for him. Chen finally held up a hand. That's enough for now. You need rest, food, shower. You've given us more than enough to start building indictments. What about Hayes? Still in surgery, but he's going to survive. And the moment he wakes up, he's being arrested and transferred to federal custody. Chen leaned back in her chair. You did good work, Serena. 3 years of investigation that my entire task force couldn't accomplish. You should be proud. I'll be proud when he's convicted. That's going to take time. Months. Maybe a year. RICO cases are complex. But with the evidence we have, with Damien's testimony, with yours, we're going to win. She paused. What will you do after, when this is over? Serena hadn't thought that far ahead. For 3 years, her entire existence had been about finding her family's killer and getting justice. She'd never planned for what came after because she'd never really believed she'd survive. I don't know, she admitted. Well, you've got time to figure it out. In the meantime, you're in protective custody until Hayes' entire network is dismantled. Could be weeks, could be months. I want to see Damien when he wakes up. Why? You spent 3 years hating him. And 48 hours learning I was wrong. He deserves to know his testimony is going to mean something. Chen studied her for a long moment. You care about him. He's the only person left who remembers my father as a hero instead of a victim. Yeah, I care about him. Careful, Serena. Damien Crowe is still a criminal. Don't romanticize him just because he helped you. I'm not romanticizing anything. I'm acknowledging that people are more complicated than the boxes we put them in. She met Chen's eyes. 3 years ago, I would have killed him if I had the chance. Now I'd take a bullet to keep him alive. That's not romance, that's recognizing that he's trying to be better than what he was. Or he's manipulating you. Then I'm a willing participant. Serena stood up from the table. Can I see him or not? Chen sighed. 5 minutes, and there's a guard outside the door. Damien's room was small and sterile and smelled like disinfectant trying to cover the scent of blood. He was still unconscious, still connected to machines, still gray-faced and fragile in a way that seemed impossible for someone who'd controlled half the eastern seaboard. Serena sat in the chair beside his bed and took his hand. It was cold. You better wake up, she said quietly. You better survive this. Because I didn't spend 3 years hunting you just to watch you die before we finish the job. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. No response. My father saved you for a reason. He saw something in you worth preserving. I didn't believe it at first. Thought he was just being heroic, being selfless, being dad. Her throat got tight. But maybe he saw what you could become. Saw the potential underneath all the violence and crime. Saw someone who could change. Still nothing. Just breathing machines and heart monitors. So change, Serena whispered. Wake up. Testify. Help me destroy Hayes and everyone like him. And then maybe we both get to find out who we are when we're not defined by revenge and survival. She sat there for the full 5 minutes, then longer, until a nurse came in and gently told her visiting hours were over. Will he make it? Serena asked. The nurse's expression was professionally neutral. The next 24 hours are critical, but he's strong, and he's fighting. Yeah, he is. Serena left the room and found Chen waiting in the hallway. Vincent's out of surgery, Chen said. He's alive, barely. Doctors say if the paramedics had been 30 seconds slower, he'd be dead. Can I see him? He's not conscious. Probably won't be for days. But when he wakes up, yeah, you can see him. Chen started walking and Serena fell into step beside her. I've been going through the evidence you provided. The detail work is extraordinary. You tracked financial transactions through 8 different countries. You identified witness who'd been in hiding for years. You built a case that most federal investigators couldn't build with unlimited resources. I had unlimited time and unlimited motivation. Still, it's impressive. Ever thought about law enforcement as a career? Serena almost laughed. You're recruiting me? I'm suggesting you have skills that could be useful on the right side of the law. You spent 3 years investigating a criminal conspiracy. You went undercover in a criminal organization without getting caught. You're disciplined, smart, and apparently immune to intimidation. Chen stopped at an elevator and pressed the button. When this is over, when Hayes is in prison and his network is dismantled, you're going to need something to do with yourself. Something that isn't revenge. I'll think about it. Good, because I could use someone with your talents on my task force. The elevator arrived. But first, you need rest. Real rest. Not adrenaline-fueled survival mode. Actual sleep in an actual bed. They took the elevator to the 8th floor where protective custody housing was located. Small apartments designed for witnesses who needed security. Chen showed Serena to one that had a bed, bathroom, kitchenette, and windows that overlooked the city. Locked from the outside, Chen explained. Guards at both ends of the hallway. You're safe here. Nobody gets in without clearance. What about Jamie and Marcus? In similar housing 2 floors down. They're being debriefed separately, but they'll be fine. Chen handed Serena a burner phone. This has my number programmed in. You need anything, you call. But otherwise, get some sleep. We've got a long road ahead. She left, and Serena was finally alone for the first time in what felt like years. She should have showered, should have eaten, should have done all the things Chen recommended. Instead, she stood at the window watching the city wake up below. Somewhere out there, Hayes was in a hospital bed under arrest. Elena was running for her life. Damien was fighting to survive. Vincent was in critical condition. And Serena was standing in protective custody in a federal building, having just handed over 3 years of evidence to prosecute the man who murdered her family. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at a drop she couldn't survive, and realizing the only way forward was to jump. 23 hours later, Damien woke up. Serena was back in his room. Chen had given her extended access after she'd spent the entire day reviewing evidence and giving supplemental statements. She was sitting in the same chair, reading through case files on a tablet Chen had provided, when Damien's eyes opened. "You look terrible," he said. His voice was sandpaper on concrete. "You look dead, but apparently you're too stubborn to commit." Stubborn, yeah. He tried to sit up and made it approximately 2 inches before his body vetoed the idea. Vincent? Alive. Critical condition but stable. Doctors say he'll make it. Relief washed across Damien's face. Good. That's good. He looked at the machines, the tubes, the sterile room. How bad? You had a collapsed lung, internal bleeding, and you were about 15 minutes from bleeding out when Chen's people got to you. The surgeon said you were lucky the bullet missed your heart by 2 inches. Lucky, right. Damien's hand found hers on the bed rail. Hayes? Alive. Under arrest. Chen's building a RICO case that'll put him away forever, along with 43 other people in his network. Elena? Still missing, but Chen's got every federal agency looking for her. She won't get far. Serena squeezed his hand. You did it, Damien. You survived. And now you get to testify and watch Hayes' empire burn. We did it. You spent 3 years building the case. I just provided the ending. The ending where you almost died. Better than the ending where everyone died. He managed a weak smile. Your father would have approved. He was all about saving people at the last possible second. Serena's eyes burned. He would have liked knowing you survived to do something good. Think he'd forgive me for all the bad? I think he'd say people are defined by their choices, not their mistakes. And you're choosing to testify, to help dismantle corruption, to try to be better. She wiped her eyes before the tears could fall. That counts for something. Does it count enough for you to forgive me? There's nothing to forgive. You didn't kill my family. You tried to save them. Serena met his eyes. But if you're asking if I forgive you for being part of the world that got them killed, for running the operations that brought violence to that warehouse, yeah, I forgive you. Because holding on to hate was eating me alive, and you're giving me something better to hold on to. Which is? Hope that justice actually means something. Damien's eyes were getting heavy, the medication pulling him back under. Chen's deal, 5 to 7 years. You think I should take it? I think you should take it and use the time to figure out who you want to be when you get out. Because the Damien Crow who ran a criminal empire, he's dead. Time to decide who replaces him. Maybe someone who honors debts to dead heroes. Maybe someone who just tries to be decent. She squeezed his hand again. Get some rest. We've got months of legal battles ahead. Serena? His voice was fading. Thank you for not giving up, for finding the truth, for... He was asleep before he finished. Serena sat there watching him breathe naturally for the first time in 24 hours and felt something shift in her chest. Not closure, not peace, but maybe the beginning of both. The door opened and Chen walked in. You wake up? She asked. For a few minutes. Wants to take the deal. Smart man. I'll have my people draw up the paperwork. Chen pulled up a chair. I've got news. We found Elena. Serena's pulse kicked up. Where? Trying to board a private plane to the Cayman Islands with $8 million in cash and enough forged documents to start a new life. Chen's smile was predatory. She's in custody, and she's decided to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. How reduced? 15 years instead of life. She provides testimony against Hayes, against his network, against every dirty cop and corrupt official she helped. In exchange, she gets to live out her 60s in minimum security instead of dying in a supermax. That's it? 15 years for betraying everyone who trusted her? It's 15 years or we go to trial, and she maybe gets acquitted by a jury who believes she was coerced. This way, we guarantee she goes to prison, and we get her testimony. Chen leaned forward. I know it feels like she's getting away with it, but in federal prison, 15 years is a lifetime, and she'll spend every day knowing she destroyed her career, her reputation, and her freedom for money she'll never get to spend. Serena wanted to argue, wanted to demand life sentences for everyone involved. But she was learning that justice wasn't about punishment. It was about accountability. And Elena was being held accountable. When does the trial start? Preliminary hearings in 6 weeks. Actual trial probably 8 to 10 months from now. It's going to be a media circus. You ready for that? Do I have a choice? You could refuse to testify. Take the fifth. Walk away. Chen's expression softened slightly. But I don't think you will. I think you're going to stand up in court and tell the truth about what happened to your family. And I think your testimony is going to put Hayes away forever. Yeah, I am. Serena stood up from the chair. But first I need to do something. What? Visit my father's grave. Tell him we got the bastards who killed him. Chen nodded. I'll arrange an escort. You're still in protective custody until Hayes' remaining network is neutralized. How long? However long it takes. Could be weeks. Could be months, But you're not safe until every corrupt cop and dirty official who worked for Hayes is either in custody or too scared to retaliate. So I'm a prisoner. You're a protected witness. There's a difference. Doesn't feel like it. Freedom never feels like it when you're waiting for it. Chen stood. But it's coming, Serena. Justice is coming. And when it does, you get to decide who you want to be on the other side of it. Thomas Vale's grave was in a cemetery on the north side of the city, tucked between a highway and a housing development that had been half finished when the developer went bankrupt. The headstone was simple granite with his name, dates, and the words "Beloved Father." Next to it was Marcus's grave. Smaller stone. Younger dates. The epitaph read, "He loved skateboarding and terrible jokes." Serena knelt between them with federal agents standing 20 feet back, giving her privacy. "Hey, Dad," she said quietly. "Hey, Marcus. Sorry it took me so long to visit. Been busy." The graves didn't answer, just grass and stone and the distant sound of traffic. "I found them. The people who killed you. Not who I thought. Not the man I spent 3 years hating. But I found them anyway." She traced her father's name with one finger. Captain Richard Hayes, Detective Marcus Reeves, Elena Cross, 40 other corrupt cops and officials. They're all going to prison. Every single one. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of cut grass and exhaust fumes. "Damien Crowe sends his regards. The man you saved. He's alive because you pulled him from the fire, and he's testifying against Hayes because you showed him there was another way to live." Serena's voice cracked. "He said you were a hero, said you died saving people who weren't your responsibility, said you told him someone has to, and then ran back into the flames." She wiped her eyes. "I wish I'd been more like you. Spent 3 years being angry instead of being kind, hunting monsters instead of helping people. But maybe I can change. Maybe I can take what you taught me about standing up for what's right and use it for something good instead of just revenge." The graves remained silent. "I miss you both," Serena whispered, "every single day. And I'm sorry it took your deaths to make me realize how important family was, how important it is to fight for people instead of against them." She stood up, knees aching from kneeling on cold ground. "Rest easy. The people who killed you are going to pay. And I'm going to make sure your deaths meant something, that they led to justice instead of just more violence." One of the federal agents cleared his throat gently, the signal that they needed to leave before the security risk got too high. Serena touched each headstone once more, then walked back to the armored car that would take her back to protective custody. As they drove through the city, past the harbor, where the warehouse fire had happened 3 years ago, past the club where she'd served Damien drinks for 9 months, past the streets where her father had worked and her brother had played, Serena realized something. She wasn't that broken 23-year-old anymore. Wasn't the woman consumed by grief and rage? Somewhere between hunting Damien and partnering with him, between building a case and nearly dying for it, she'd become someone new, someone stronger, someone ready to watch Hayes burn. Besam. 8 months later, the trial began. The courthouse looked like something from a movie. Marble columns, stone steps, media vans parked 3 deep outside. Reporters shouted questions that security ignored. Protesters held signs demanding justice. Inside, the courtroom was packed with spectators, lawyers, federal agents, and people whose lives had been destroyed by Hayes' corruption. Serena sat in the witness waiting room, wearing a suit Chen had provided, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Damien was testifying first. She'd watched him walk into the courtroom an hour ago in prison jumpsuit and shackles, looking nothing like the kingpin who'd controlled the eastern seaboard. He'd pled guilty to his own crimes 3 months ago and was serving his sentence in federal prison while waiting to testify. 5 years. He'd gotten 5 because of cooperation and because the judge acknowledged he'd tried to save lives during the harbor fire. Vincent was still recovering, couldn't testify yet, might never be physically capable, but he'd given depositions, video testimony, enough to corroborate Damien's statements. Jamie had testified yesterday, described her kidnapping, her terror, the moment Serena and Damien's team had rescued her. The defense attorneys had tried to rattle her, but Chen had prepared her well. She'd held up. Now it was Serena's turn. A bailiff opened the door. "Ms. Vale, they're ready for you." She stood on legs that felt like water. and walked into the courtroom. Hayes sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking calm and confident despite the mountain of evidence against him. His attorneys flanked him like bodyguards. Elena sat at the prosecution table looking diminished and hollow. She'd already pled guilty and was testifying against Hayes to reduce her sentence. The jury looked tired. They'd been listening to testimony for 6 weeks, had seen the evidence, had heard from dozens of witnesses. Now they'd hear from the daughter of the man Hayes had helped murder. Chen stood at the prosecution table. The prosecution calls Serena Vale. Serena walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, sat down. Chen approached with a gentle expression that didn't match her reputation as a shark. "Ms. Vale, can you tell the jury about the night of October 14th, 3 years ago?" Serena took a breath. And then she told them everything, about her father going to work at Warehouse 7, about her brother tagging along, about waiting for them to come home and getting a call from the police instead, about the investigation that called it an accident, about not believing it, about spending 3 years digging into financial records and witness statements and building a case, about discovering Carlos Mendoza's role, about tracking the jammer purchase to Hayes, about going undercover at the Meridian Club, about meeting Damian Crow and realizing he wasn't the monster she'd thought, about Mikhail Volkov's deathbed confession, about the photographs showing her father trying to save people, about Hayes's recorded admission in the warehouse. She spoke for 4 hours, answered every question Chen asked, identified evidence, corroborated timelines, built a narrative that the jury could follow from beginning to end. When the defense attorney stood for cross-examination, he tried to poke holes, tried to suggest she was unreliable, tried to imply she was biased. Serena met every question with calm precision. "You spent 3 years obsessed with revenge, didn't you, Ms. Vale? I spent 3 years seeking truth, and when that truth didn't match what you wanted, you partnered with a known criminal?" "I partnered with a man who tried to save my father's life." "Yes. A man who's currently serving time in federal prison for racketeering? A man who's testifying against corruption because he wants to be better than what he was." The attorney tried for 2 more hours to shake her, failed, dismissed her with barely concealed frustration. Serena stepped down from the witness stand and walked out of the courtroom with her head high. In the hallway, Chen was waiting with a rare smile. "You were perfect," she said. "Composed, credible, compelling. The jury believed every word." "Will it be enough?" Combined with Damian's testimony, Elena's cooperation, the physical evidence, the recordings? Chen's smile turned sharp. "Hayes is done. We've proven conspiracy, corruption, obstruction of justice, and accessory to 17 counts of murder. He's going to die in prison." "Good." They stood there for a moment in the courthouse hallway while bailiffs and lawyers rushed past, and somewhere in the courtroom, closing arguments were beginning. "What happens now?" Serena asked. "Now." The jury deliberates. Could be days, could be weeks. But when they come back, they're going to convict. And Hayes is going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. And after that? After that, you're free. Protected witness status ends. You can go anywhere, be anyone. Chen handed her a card. "But if you want a job investigating corruption and organized crime for the federal government, you call me." Serena took the card. "I'll think about it." "Good. Because you're wasted on anything else." 3 days later, the jury came back. Guilty on all counts. Hayes's face went white when the verdict was read. His attorneys immediately filed appeals. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks out. But everyone knew what the sentence would be. Life. Multiple consecutive life sentences. No possibility of parole. Serena watched from the gallery as Hayes was led out in handcuffs, and felt something release in her chest that had been clenched tight for 3 years. Justice. Not revenge, not closure, just accountability for crimes committed and lives destroyed. Outside the courthouse, media was waiting. Serena pushed through them without answering questions. Chen handled the press conference, described the conviction as a victory against corruption, thanked the jury, promised continued prosecution of Hayes's network. Serena got into a car, not a federal vehicle this time, just a regular taxi, and gave the driver an address. Federal prison, minimum security facility, 2 hours north of the city. Visiting hours ended at 4 p.m. She had 90 minutes. "Isa." Damien looked healthier than he had in the hospital. Prison routine agreed with him. He'd gained back weight. His color was better. When he sat down across from her in the visiting room, separated by glass and telephone, he smiled. "Heard you made Hayes cry during your testimony," he said into the phone. "He didn't cry, but he looked scared." Serena picked up her phone. "Jury came back. Guilty on everything. I heard. Whole cell block was celebrating. Turns out a lot of guys in here hate corrupt cops. How's Vincent?" "Still recovering but alive. He's in a medical facility. Should be well enough to walk in another 6 months." Damien's expression went serious. "They're calling us heroes, you know, in the media. People who exposed corruption at the highest levels. We're not heroes. We're just people who got tired of letting monsters win." "Your father was a hero. We're just following his example." Serena's throat tightened. "He'd be proud of you, for testifying, for taking responsibility, for trying to be better. And you? What's next for Serena Vale, the woman who took down a criminal conspiracy?" "I don't know yet. Chen offered me a job, federal investigator, going after organized crime." "You'd be good at it." "Maybe. Or maybe I need to figure out who I am when I'm not hunting monsters." She pressed her palm against the glass. "What about you? 5 years is a long time." "It's also not. I'll be out at 40. Still time to build something legitimate, something that wouldn't make your father ashamed." Damien pressed his palm against the glass opposite hers. "Will you visit while I'm in here?" "Yeah, I'll visit." "Good. Because I'm going to need someone to remind me why I'm doing this. Why testifying was worth prison time. Why changing is worth the cost." "I'll remind you, every visit," Serena managed to smile. "And when you get out, maybe we figure out what comes next, together." "That's a long time to wait." "I've waited 3 years already. What's 5 more?" The guard called time. Visiting hours were ending. Damien stood up slowly. "Serena, thank you. For everything. For finding the truth. For giving me a chance to honor the debt I owed your father. For showing me there's another way to live. Thank you for trying to save him. For testifying. For being brave enough to change." They hung up the phones simultaneously. Damien walked back toward the cell blocks. Serena walked out toward freedom. Outside the prison, the sun was setting over hills that looked nothing like the harbor district. Clean air, open space. The kind of place where people could breathe. Serena got back in the taxi and told the driver to take her to the nearest train station. She had a long ride back to the city. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to figure out who Serena Vale would become now that justice had finally been served. The train pulled into the station as darkness fell. Serena bought a ticket, found a seat by the window, and watched the landscape blur past. Somewhere in the city, Hayes was in a cell waiting for sentencing. Elena was in prison regretting her choices. Damien was serving his time and planning for a future beyond crime. And Serena was free. Finally, completely, utterly free from the rage and grief that had defined her for 3 years. She pulled out her phone and called Chen. "I'll take the job," she said when the prosecutor answered. "Federal investigator. Going after corruption. When do I start?" Chen laughed. "How about Monday? We've got 17 more cases connected to Hayes' network. Could use someone with your talents to help dismantle them. Monday works." "Welcome to the team, Serena. Your father would be proud." Serena hung up and stared out the window at the darkness rushing past. Yeah, she thought. He would be. And maybe, just maybe, she was finally proud of herself too. The train carried her toward tomorrow while the past faded into the distance behind her. And for the first time in 3 years, Serena Vale believed the future might actually be worth living for. 6 weeks after the verdict, Serena stood outside the federal courthouse waiting for the sentencing hearing to begin. Winter had arrived early, turning the city into something gray and brittle. Her breath formed clouds in the frozen air. She'd stopped counting the days since the harbor fire, 1,127 total, give or take, and started counting forward instead. Days until Hayes went to prison forever. Days until this chapter finally closed. The courthouse steps were emptier than during the trial. Media had moved on to fresher scandals. Protesters had found new causes. Just a handful of reporters and the people whose lives Hayes had destroyed, waiting to watch him pay. Jamie stood beside Serena, hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. They'd rebuilt their friendship slowly over the months, carefully, like people learning to trust each other after discovering how badly trust could shatter. Jamie had taken the witness protection offer, moved to Seattle under a new name, but came back for this. Some things you needed to see with your own eyes. You ready? Jamie asked. Been ready for 3 years. That's not what I meant. Jamie's voice was quiet. I meant, are you ready for it to actually be over? No more investigation, no more testimony, no more purpose driving you forward every single day. Serena didn't answer because she didn't have an answer. For 3 years, destroying Hayes had been her reason for existing. What came after that kind of singular focus? Who was Serena Vale when she wasn't hunting monsters? Chen appeared at the courthouse entrance, motioning them inside. Sentencing starts in 10 minutes. You'll want good seats. The courtroom felt smaller than Serena remembered, or maybe she'd just grown larger, expanded somehow through the process of testifying and watching justice unfold. Hayes sat at the defense table looking diminished. Prison awaiting trial had carved weight off him. His expensive suit hung loose. His skin had the pallor of someone who hadn't seen sunlight in months. Good. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The ritual of law played out in its careful choreography. The court recognizes the severity and scope of the defendant's crimes, the judge began, reading from prepared remarks. Captain Richard Hayes used his position of public trust to facilitate murder, obstruct justice, and perpetuate a criminal conspiracy that resulted in 17 deaths and countless destroyed lives. The evidence presented at trial demonstrated not momentary weakness, but sustained, deliberate corruption spanning years. Hayes stared straight ahead. No emotion, no remorse. The judge continued, on the count of conspiracy to commit murder, this court sentences the defendant to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. On the count of obstruction of justice, 25 years to run consecutively. On the 43 counts of racketeering, corruption, and related charges. It went on for 20 minutes. Each sentence another nail in the coffin. By the time the judge finished, Hayes had been sentenced to multiple consecutive life terms, totaling over 300 years. He'd die in prison. Everyone in the courtroom knew it. Does the defendant wish to make a statement before being remanded to custody? Hayes' attorney whispered something to him. Hayes shook his head. No statement, no apology. No acknowledgement of the lives he'd destroyed. Just silence. The bailiffs moved to take him away. Hayes stood, hands already cuffed, and for just a second his eyes swept the courtroom. They found Serena. She held his gaze and didn't blink. This was what winning looked like. Not triumph, not celebration, just a tired woman watching a murderer disappear into the prison system, knowing it would never bring her father back, but hoping it might prevent someone else's father from dying the same way. Hayes was let out. The courtroom started to empty. Serena didn't move. Jamie touched her shoulder. You okay? Yeah, just taking it in. It's really over. Yeah, it really is. Chen approached with a folder under her arm. Good news and complicated news. Which do you want first? Just tell me. Good news. We've dismantled Hayes' entire network. 47 people indicted. 38 already pled guilty. The remaining 9 go to trial next year, but we've got them cold. The Harbor District Precinct is being investigated by Internal Affairs, Federal Oversight, and an independent commission. Half the department is either fired, suspended, or facing charges. And the complicated news? Elena Cross was found dead in her cell this morning. The air went out of the room. What happened? Serena asked. Official ruling will be suicide. She hanged herself with bed sheets. Chen's expression suggested she didn't believe it. But she'd been moved to a different facility 2 days ago, new cellmate, and that cellmate has connections to people Hayes put away over the years. So, someone killed her. I can't prove it. The guards say they checked on her every hour like protocol requires. Cameras show nothing suspicious. But yeah, I think someone got to her, paid someone off or called in a favor, made sure Elena didn't live long enough to enjoy her reduced sentence. Jamie made a sound like she might be sick. This is never going to end, is it? Even with Hayes in prison, his people are still out there, still killing witnesses, still... His people are scattered and scared, Chen interrupted. Elena's death wasn't about protecting the network. It was revenge. Someone Hayes put away wanted payback, and Elena was an easy target. She looked at Serena. But you're safe. You've got protection, And more importantly, you're not in prison where Hayes's people can reach you. What about Damien? Vincent? They're inside. Different facilities, maximum security, protective custody wings. And honestly, Damien Crowe has his own reputation. People in prison know he took down Hayes. That buys respect. Nobody's touching him. Serena wanted to believe it. Wanted to believe the threat was over and everyone who'd helped expose Hayes's corruption would survive. But she'd spent 3 years learning that belief was dangerous and verification was survival. I want to see him, she said. Damien, today if possible. Chen checked her watch. I can make calls, get you approved for an emergency visit. But Serena, why? The case is closed. Hayes is sentenced. You don't owe Damien anything. Maybe I just want to tell him we won. Or maybe you care about him more than you're admitting. Does it matter? Chen studied her for a long moment. No, I suppose it doesn't. I'll make the calls. The prison visiting room was the same as last time. Same reinforced glass. Same phones. Same fluorescent lighting that made everyone look half dead. Damien appeared after 5 minutes, escorted by a guard who looked bored. He'd adapted to prison life in the way people do when they accept their circumstances instead of fighting them. His hair was shorter. His prison uniform was pressed. He moved with the careful awareness of someone surrounded by predators. He picked up the phone. Serena did the same. You look different, he said. It's over. Hayes got life, multiple life sentences. He'll die in prison. Damien's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes relaxed. Good. That's good. Elena's dead. Suicide, officially. Probably murder. Yeah, I heard. Word travels fast in here. He leaned back in the chair. She made choices. They caught up with her. That's how it works. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. Elena thought she could play all sides and walk away clean. But there's always a price, Serena. Always. She just paid hers earlier than expected. They sat in silence for a moment. The visiting room hummed with a dozen other conversations happening through glass and phones. Families, lawyers, people trying to maintain connections across barriers designed to sever them. Chen says you're doing well in here, Serena said finally. Staying out of trouble, following the rules. Not much choice. I cooperated with federal prosecutors. That makes me a snitch in here. I'm in protective custody because otherwise I'd be dead within a week. He smiled without humor. Turns out taking down corrupt cops doesn't make you popular in prison. But you're safe. Safe is relative. But yeah, I'm alive. And I'll stay alive because I've got people on the outside who remember I helped take down Hayes. That buys protection. He met her eyes. Including you. What? You visiting me. You being associated with me. That tells people inside that I matter to someone who matters. It's currency, Serena. Everything in here is currency. She hadn't thought about it that way. Hadn't realized her visits might be keeping him alive. How long have you got left? She asked. Of your sentence? 4 years and 8 months. Good behavior shaves off another year. So maybe 3 years, 8 months before I'm out. And then what? Damien's expression went distant. Then I figure out who I am when I'm not running a criminal empire or testifying against one. I've got some money hidden that the feds never found. Enough to start over somewhere quiet. Maybe run a legitimate business. Maybe just disappear and live simple. You don't strike me as someone who does simple. Neither do you, but we're both trying to become different people than we were. He leaned forward. What about you? What's next for Serena Vale now that justice is served? Chen offered me a job. Federal investigator. I start Monday. You taking it? Yeah, turns out I'm good at finding things people want hidden. Might as well use that skill for something constructive. Your father would be proud. The words hit harder than they should have. Serena's throat tightened. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Thomas Vale died trying to save people. You're spending your life making sure his death meant something. That's not revenge, Serena. That's honor. It started as revenge. Most good things do. We take our pain and we shape it into something useful, or we let it destroy us. You chose useful. Damien's hand pressed against the glass. That's the difference between people like us and people like Hayes. We learned. We changed. We tried to be better. Serena pressed her hand opposite his. The glass between them was cold and impersonal, but the gesture meant something anyway. I'll keep visiting, she said, while you're in here. Every month if they let me. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. You saved Vincent that night in the warehouse. You testified even though it meant prison time. You're trying to honor the debt you owed my father. She managed a small smile. Someone should honor that. 3 years is a long time to wait for someone you barely know. I spent 3 years hating someone I didn't know at all. Waiting for someone I actually respect sounds easier. The guard called time. 5 minutes until visiting hours ended. Damien stood slowly. Serena, thank you for everything. For finding the truth. For giving me a chance to be better. For not giving up even when it would have been easier. Thank you for trying to save him. For pulling people from the fire. For being the kind of person who changes when it matters. They hung up the phone simultaneously. Damien walked back toward the cell blocks. Serena walked toward the exit and the world beyond it. Outside, snow had started falling. Light, almost gentle. The kind of snow that made the city look clean instead of revealing how dirty it actually was. Chen was waiting by a car with the engine running. How'd it go? She asked. Good. He's doing okay in there. And you? Are you okay? Serena thought about it. Thought about 3 years of grief and rage. Thought about the moment she'd whispered accusations to Damien in the Meridian Club. Thought about standing in a burning warehouse while Vincent bled out and Hayes tried to kill them all. Thought about testifying in court and watching justice actually happen. Yeah, she said finally. I think I am. 3 years and 8 months later, Serena stood outside the same prison waiting for Damien to walk through the release gate. She'd visited every month like she'd promised. Watched him adapt to prison life, then watched him start planning for after. They'd talked about books they were reading, cases she was working, his plans for legitimate business ventures. The conversations had been stilted at first. Too much history, too much trauma, but they'd found a rhythm eventually. Found a way to be two people trying to become better versions of themselves. Vincent had been released 2 years earlier. He'd moved to Montana, bought a ranch, apparently spent his days raising horses and trying to forget he'd ever been a criminal enforcer. He and Serena exchanged Christmas cards. His last one had included a photo of him on horseback, looking healthier than she'd ever seen him. Jamie had stayed in Seattle. Got married, had a kid. Sent Serena photos occasionally with messages that said things like, "Never thought I'd be here after everything, and thank you for saving my life." They talked once a month. The friendship wasn't what it had been before, but it was real, and that counted for something. The federal investigation job had become Serena's life. She was good at it, really good. Chen had promoted her twice, given her complex cases involving organized crime and corruption. Serena had helped dismantle 3 major criminal networks in the last 3 years, had testified in court 17 times, had become the kind of investigator who criminals feared and prosecutors loved. She'd also started sleeping through the night. The nightmares about the harbor fire had faded. She could think about her father and brother without the crushing weight of grief threatening to collapse her lungs. Could visit their graves without crying. The therapy had helped. Chen had insisted on it as part of the job. Regular sessions with a trauma specialist who'd worked with federal witnesses before. Serena had resisted at first, but eventually admitted that talking about the last 6 years was better than carrying them alone. The gate opened. Damien Crowe walked out wearing civilian clothes that looked wrong on him after years of prison uniforms. He'd aged in the way people do when incarceration strips away everything except what's essential. Leaner, harder. But his eyes were clearer than they'd been in the visiting room. He saw Serena and smiled. She walked toward him carrying a duffel bag with the clothes and documents he'd need to reintegrate into the world. He took the bag and just stood there for a moment, breathing free air for the first time in almost 4 years. "You didn't have to come," he said. "Yeah, I did. Someone had to make sure you didn't get lost on the way out. I've been planning this route for 3 years. I think I can handle the exit. Still, better safe than sorry." They stood awkwardly for a moment. 4 years of monthly visits through glass and phones, and now they were in the same physical space without barriers. It felt strange, like they'd been speaking different languages and now had to figure out how to communicate directly. "I've got a car," Serena said finally. "Figure we can grab food somewhere. Real food, not prison cafeteria garbage. And then I'll drive you wherever you want to go." "Anywhere?" "Within reason. I've got work Monday." Damien smiled. There's a town about 200 miles north. Small place, quiet. I bought property there with the money the feds didn't seize. Thought I'd try my hand at running a legitimate business. Maybe a restaurant. Maybe just a quiet life. 200 miles north, that's specific. I had a lot of time to plan. He looked at her directly. What about you? Federal investigator job working out. Yeah, I'm good at it. Turns out spending 3 years building a case against you taught me skills I didn't know I had. Ever think about doing something else? Something that doesn't involve criminals and corruption? Every day. But then I think about my father and what he died trying to do, save people. And I'd remember that this job is how I save people now, just differently. They walked to Serena's car, a practical sedan that screamed federal employee. She drove them to a diner 40 minutes away, the kind of place with vinyl booths and laminated menus and coffee that tasted like nostalgia. Damien ordered everything. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, hash browns, toast. Prison food had apparently been as terrible as everyone said. So what's the plan? Serena asked while they waited for food. You buy this property up north, you start a business. And then what? Then I try to be normal. Try to live a life that doesn't involve violence or crime or looking over my shoulder constantly. He poured sugar into his coffee with the care of someone who'd been denied small pleasures for years. Your father gave me a second chance when he pulled me from that fire. I wasted the first few years of it. Figure I've got maybe 20, 30 years left if I'm lucky. Want to spend them being the person he saw potential in instead of the person I was. That's ambitious. What about you? What's your plan? Serena stirred her own coffee. Keep working the job. Keep investigating corruption. Keep making sure people like Hayes don't get away with destroying innocent lives. And maybe, she paused, maybe figure out how to be Serena Vale instead of Thomas Vale's daughter. I've been defined by his death for so long. Time to figure out who I am beyond that. You're the woman who took down a criminal conspiracy, who testified in federal court, who helped dismantle a corruption network that had operated for years. That's not nothing. It's not everything either. The food arrived. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Outside the diner windows, the world continued its routine. People going to work, kids walking to school. Normal life happening for people who'd never had to face the kind of darkness Serena and Damien had waded through. I've been thinking, Damien said eventually, about what your father said. Someone has to. Like it was the simplest truth in the world. He believed in responsibility, in standing up when it mattered. Yeah, and I've been trying to honor that. In prison, I taught GED classes to inmates who never finished high school, helped guys write letters to their kids, tried to be the kind of influence that made the place slightly less toxic. He looked at her. Small things. Not heroic, but someone had to do them. Serena felt something shift in her chest. He would have liked that. You think? I think he saved you because he saw something worth saving, and you proved him right. They finished eating. Serena paid despite Damien's protest. Outside, the day had warmed slightly. Winter releasing its grip in preparation for spring. You want me to drive you all the way north? Serena asked, or just to a bus station? How much time do you have? I took the weekend off. First time in 3 years. Then drive me north. I'd like the company, and maybe... Damien hesitated. Maybe you'd like to see what I'm building up there. The legitimate life, the fresh start. You asking me to visit? I'm asking if you'd want to. No obligation, no expectations. Just, I don't know. Checking in occasionally on the guy you spent 3 years investigating. Serena unlocked the car. Get in. Let's see this property of yours. They drove north for 2 hours, leaving the city behind. The landscape transformed gradually from urban sprawl to suburbs, to small towns, to genuine countryside. Trees replaced buildings, fields replaced parking lots. The sky opened up in a way it never did in the city. Damien directed her off the highway onto smaller roads. Finally, they pulled up to a property that looked like it had once been a farm. Old barn in the back. Main house that needed work but had good bones. Land stretching out in all directions. This is it, Damien said. Bought it through a shell company before I went to prison. Had people maintaining it while I was inside. Figured when I got out, I'd turn the barn into a workshop. Maybe the house into a bed and breakfast. Something quiet. Something honest. Serena got out of the car and looked around. It was beautiful in a plain, unassuming way. The kind of beauty that came from simplicity instead of grandeur. Your father grew up on a farm, didn't he? Damien asked. How did you... You mentioned it once during a visit. Said he left farming to work the docks because the money was better, but he always missed the land. Damien walked toward the house. Figured maybe this place would honor that somehow, build something he would have respected. Serena followed him onto the porch. The wood needed refinishing, but it was solid underneath. You're really going to do this? She asked. Leave the criminal life completely? Build something legitimate? I did 4 years in federal prison. Had a lot of time to think about who I wanted to be on the other side. He leaned against the railing. I can't bring your father back. Can't undo the years I spent running a criminal organization, but I can make sure the rest of my life means something. That's all anyone gets, right? The chance to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. That's almost philosophical. Prison does that to you. Makes you think about legacy, about what you leave behind when you're gone. He looked at her. What do you want to leave behind, Serena? She'd never thought about it that way. Had spent so long focused on justice and accountability that she'd never considered what came after, what she wanted to build instead of destroy. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe the knowledge that I helped people, that I used my father's death to prevent other people from suffering the same way, that I turned pain into purpose. That's not nothing. It's not everything either. They stood on the porch watching the sun move across the sky. A hawk circled overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. You could visit, Damien said quietly. Once I get this place running, once it's something worth visiting, you could come up on weekends, see what I've built, make sure I'm staying honest. Is that what you want? Me checking up on you? I want someone to remember why I'm doing this. Someone who knew your father, someone who understands why his death changed me. He turned to face her fully. And maybe I just want to see you more than once through prison glass. Serena studied his face, the lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair, the evidence of years spent paying for crimes committed. I'll visit, she said. Not to check up on you. Just to see what you build. And maybe, she smiled slightly, maybe to remember that people can change when they decide it matters. But 6 months later, Serena drove north on a Saturday morning with groceries in her trunk and a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt in years. She'd visited the property 3 times since Damien's release. Each time, it had transformed a little more. The house had been renovated, the barn converted into a woodworking shop where Damien made custom furniture. He'd hired 2 employees, ex-convicts trying to restart their lives. Started selling pieces to boutiques in nearby towns. It wasn't grand, wasn't the empire he'd run before, but it was real. And it was his. Serena had continued her work with the federal task force, had helped take down 2 more criminal networks, had testified in court and watched justice happen. But she'd also started taking weekends off, started sleeping without nightmares, started building a life that existed outside the cases she worked. She pulled up to the property and found Damien in the workshop, teaching one of his employees how to properly sand a tabletop. He looked up when she entered, smiled, and finished the lesson before walking over. You brought food, he said, eyeing the grocery bags. Figured we could cook dinner. Actual dinner, not takeout. You cook now? I'm learning. Turns out having hobbies outside of investigating crime is healthy. She set the bags on the workshop table. How's business? Good. Really good. We've got orders backed up for 3 months. People actually want to buy furniture made by ex-cons, apparently. There's a market for redemption stories. Or maybe they just want well-made furniture. Maybe both. They walked to the house together. Damien had painted it last month, soft blue with white trim. It looked like something from a postcard. Inside, he'd furnished it with pieces from the workshop. Simple, but beautiful. Serena started unpacking groceries while Damien opened windows to let in spring air. I've been thinking, he said while she prepped vegetables, about the future. What about it? About whether this... He gestured vaguely at the house, the property, the life he was building, is enough. Whether spending the rest of my life making furniture and trying to be decent is sufficient penance for the years I spent being something else. Serena stopped chopping and looked at him. You think you need to do penance? Don't you? For the 3 years you spent hating me? For the obsession that consumed your life? I think we both did what we thought was necessary at the time. You built an empire because you thought that's what power looked like. I built a case against you because I thought that's what justice looked like. We were both wrong in different ways. And now we're trying to be better. That's not penance, Damien. That's just growth. He sat at the kitchen table watching her work. Your father would have liked you, the person you've become, strong, principled, capable of forgiving even when it would be easier not to. He would have liked you too, the person you're becoming. They cooked dinner together, pasta with vegetables and sauce Serena had learned to make from a cookbook Chen had given her as a joke that turned into a genuine hobby. They ate on the porch while sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. I got a letter from Vincent, Damien said between bites. He's thinking about visiting, wants to see what I've built up here. That'd be good. You two should reconnect. Yeah, he saved my life in that warehouse. Took bullets meant for me. Figure I owe him more than Christmas cards. We all owe each other more than we've given. But we're learning. After dinner, they sat on the porch watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The kind of stars you couldn't see in the city. The kind that reminded you the world was bigger than your problems. Can I ask you something? Damien said quietly. Yeah. When you visit, once a month, sometimes twice, is it because you're checking up on me? Making sure I'm staying clean? Or is it something else? Serena had known this question was coming. Had been preparing for it since the day she'd picked him up from prison. At first it was checking up on you, she admitted, making sure prison hadn't broken you, making sure you were honoring the deal you made with Chen, but then she paused. Then it became something else. I started looking forward to these visits, started planning them in advance, started thinking about you when I wasn't here. And what does that mean? I don't know yet. We've both got complicated histories. You spent years running a criminal empire. I spent years trying to destroy you. That's not exactly a foundation for anything healthy. But maybe we're building something healthier now. Maybe visiting you isn't about the past anymore. Maybe it's about the future we're both trying to create. Damien reached over and took her hand. His palm was calloused from woodworking, warm, real. I spent 4 years in prison thinking about what I wanted when I got out, he said. At first it was freedom. Then it was redemption. Then it became something more complicated. It became wanting someone to share the redemption with, someone who understood the journey because they were on their own version of it. That's a lot of pressure to put on a federal investigator who used to want you dead. Good thing you don't want me dead anymore. Good thing. They sat in silence, hands linked, watching the stars. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. The night settled around them like a blanket. Stay, Damien said. Tonight, tomorrow. As long as you want. No expectations, no pressure. Just stay. Serena thought about it. Thought about the life she'd built in the city. The cases waiting on her desk. The routine she'd established. The safety of keeping her distance from someone who represented so much of her past. Then she thought about her father saying someone has to. About choosing to be brave instead of safe. About building something new instead of hiding in what was comfortable. Okay, she said. I'll stay. Chuck. 2 years later, Serena stood in the cemetery on the anniversary of the harbor fire. 7 years since her father and brother had died. 7 years since everything changed. She'd brought flowers, yellow roses for her father, his favorite, a skateboard magazine for Marcus because even in death, he'd appreciate the gesture. Hey, Dad, she said, kneeling between the graves. Hey, Marcus. Sorry it's been a while since I visited. Been busy. The graves didn't answer, but she'd stopped expecting them to. Hayes died in prison 3 months ago. Heart attack. He was alone when it happened. Guards found him in his cell. The official report says natural causes, but honestly, I think the weight of his crimes finally crushed him. She arranged the flowers in the built-in vases. Elena Cross died years ago. I know I told you about that before. And Mendoza's been dead even longer. Everyone responsible for your deaths is gone now. Every single person who helped cover it up is either in prison or dead. Justice happened, Dad. It actually happened. A breeze picked up, carrying the smell of cut grass. I'm still working for the federal task force. Chen promoted me again last year. I run my own team now. We're investigating corruption in 3 different cities. I'm good at it, really good. And I hope, You'd be proud of what I'm doing, using my skills to help people instead of just destroying the people who hurt us." She traced her father's name on the headstone. "I moved in with Damien, the man you saved from the fire. We're building something together up north. It's quiet. It's honest. It's nothing like the lives either of us thought we'd have. But it's good, Dad. It's really good." The wind picked up again, stronger this time. "He's different now, changed by prison, by testifying, by trying to honor the debt he owed you. He runs a legitimate business, employs people trying to restart their lives, makes beautiful things instead of destroying them. You'd like him, I think, or at least you'd like who he's become." She stood up, knees protesting slightly. "I'm happy. I know that sounds strange after everything, after 7 years of grief and rage and obsession, but I'm actually happy. I found justice for you. I found purpose for myself. And I found someone who understands that we're both just people trying to be better than our worst moments." The sun broke through clouds overhead, casting light across the cemetery. "So rest easy, both of you. The people who killed you paid for it. The system you believed in actually worked eventually. And your daughter—" Her voice cracked. "Your daughter is going to be okay, finally, after all this time." She kissed her fingers and pressed them to each headstone, then turned and walked back toward the car where Damien was waiting. He'd offered to come with her, but she'd needed to do this alone. Needed to tell her father about the life she'd built without having Damien there to witness the grief that still surfaced sometimes. "How'd it go?" he asked when she reached the car. "Good. I told him about us. About the business. About Hayes dying in prison." "What do you think he would have said?" "He would have said I deserve happiness. That spending 7 years punishing myself for his death wasn't what he wanted. That I should live the life he died trying to give me the chance to live." Damien pulled her into a hug. She let herself sink into it, let herself be held by someone who understood loss and redemption in equal measure. "You ready to go home?" he asked. Home. The word felt right. Not the city apartment she still technically owned but rarely visited. Not her childhood house that had been sold years ago. Home was the property up north with the blue house and the workshop and the life they were building together. "Yeah," she said. "Let's go home." They drove north as afternoon turned to evening. Serena watched the landscape transform from urban to rural, from cluttered to open, from the past to the future. Her phone buzzed. Text from Chen. "New case. Possible corruption ring in the state attorney's office. Need your expertise. Call me Monday." Another case. Another investigation. Another chance to use her skills for something that mattered. But that was Monday's problem. Today, tonight, was for remembering her father and brother, for acknowledging how far she'd come, for being grateful she'd survived when so many others hadn't. "You okay?" Damien asked, noticing her expression. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how strange life is. 7 years ago, I was standing outside a police cordon watching them pull bodies from a burning warehouse. I was broken, destroyed. I thought I'd never be whole again. And now? Now I'm driving home with the man I spent 3 years wanting to kill, planning to cook dinner and watch the sunset and maybe work on that bookshelf you've been teaching me to build. Life is strange." Strange but good? Serena thought about it, about the grave she'd just left, about the justice she'd fought for, about the person she'd become through the process of surviving grief and channeling it into purpose. "Yeah," she said finally, "strange but good." They arrived home as the sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that looked like hope. Damien went to the workshop to finish a project. Serena changed into comfortable clothes and started preparing dinner. Through the kitchen window, she could see him working, measuring, sanding, creating something from nothing with patient hands and careful attention. 7 years ago, he'd been a criminal kingpin. She'd been a grieving daughter consumed by revenge. Now they were just two people trying to build something honest out of the wreckage of their former lives. Serena's phone buzzed again. This time a text from Jamie. "Anniversary of the fire. Thinking of you. Hope you're doing okay." She typed back, "I'm good, really good. How are the kids?" The response came quickly. "Growing too fast. You should visit sometime. Bring Damien. Kids would love the farm. Maybe next month. Love to the family." Serena set the phone down and finished making dinner. When Damien came in from the workshop, she had the table set and food ready. They ate together in comfortable silence. The kind that comes from knowing someone well enough that conversation isn't necessary. After dinner, they walked to the barn and worked on the bookshelf Serena was learning to build. Damien guided her hands, showed her how to align joints properly, how to sand with the grain instead of against it. "You're getting better at this," he said, examining her work. "I had a good teacher. Your father would have liked seeing you work with your hands, building instead of destroying. He would have liked seeing you do the same." As night settled over the property, they sat on the porch with mugs of tea and watched stars appear in the darkening sky. 7 years since the harbor fire. 7 years since everything changed. But sitting here, on this porch, with this man, building this life, Serena realized she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not revenge, not even justice, though that had mattered. What she'd found was peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you did everything you could, from knowing the people who destroyed your family paid for their crimes, from knowing you survived when survival seemed impossible, from knowing that your father's final act, saving Damien Crowe from the flames, had set in motion a chain of events that led to this moment, this peace, this chance to build something good from something terrible. "Thank you," Serena said quietly. Damien looked at her. "For what?" "For surviving, for testifying, for building this life, for giving me a reason to believe people can change. Thank you for giving me the chance to change, for not giving up when it would have been easier, for showing me that redemption is possible even when you don't deserve it." They sat in silence, hands linked, watching the stars. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted its evening song. The world continued turning, and Serena Vale, daughter, investigator, survivor, finally allowed herself to believe in tomorrow. Not because the past was forgotten, but because the future was worth building.